Hi, everybody. Marc Lawrence for the all new Playbook Experts YouTube channel, your one stop go to source for winning football information. We're excited about the Playbook Experts YouTube channel, where you'll pick up free winning information each and every visit when you log on to the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe when you do, and when you do, we'll send you information about the next free video that's posted at the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. And now, on with the show.
All right, let's talk some football, Mark, as we head to week 7 in college football, week 6 in the NFL, almost mid-October. Actually, we are at mid-October right now. Games have already started this week in college football, NFL, and college football continuing tonight, and college football tomorrow night before the weekend, Mark. So lots going on. You had your Against the Spread podcast, of course, to kick off the week yesterday with Victor. That went well. And of course, just want to remind everybody they can check out Playbook Experts YouTube channel. And that's where you can find you guys. You do your weekly show, and Andy Isco's on there talking about Vegas contests. And of course, Jim Feist posts several videos each week and gives his free picks. So anybody who loves handicapping and gambling should always check out Playbook Experts.
Absolutely. It's a must go to site right now, especially in the world of video, Greg, of which we dipped our toe into, and we're loving it right now. We're getting great response from all of our viewers here, myself and a cast of other Playbook experts. Just check it out on our YouTube channel at Playbook Experts.
Please remember to subscribe to our channel, like, share the video. Obviously, if you like what you see, that's most important, and subscriptions are very important to the lifeblood of our channel. So please do that if you like the videos. And also let us know what you think about the show today. That's always important. You have the comment section that you can check out. So questions, comments, anything. Participate, that'd be great. And also the links in the description area. I always put in the links to any of our partners or our top analysts, including Mark. It makes it easy for you to check out Mark's channel. So you don't even have to go find it for the first time, because when you find it for the first time, hopefully you're subscribing to his channel as well. All right, so now this week, we mentioned last week, we teased last week that we were going to have a different kind of show this week, and that's because since we are pretty much at the midway point in college football, I figured this is the perfect time to do sort of like a mid-season report on every conference in college football. So we're going to be doing that in just a little bit, and then we're going to go and do the rest of what we do here on the show, including our college football analysis and picks, NFL, and so forth. Don't forget, we have our college football extra report that's coming up later on. We have our fantasy football report that's coming up later on with Jared Svola of Draft Sharks. So a jam-packed show ready for you once again. I do have to start off, though, before we get into our mid-season report, Mark, and talk about what happened last week, because I think this is important. We talk about this every year, and this is usually the time we talk about it. For me personally, this is the first bad. I'm coming off my first bad week, and a couple of things I wanted to talk about with that. First of all, and I don't know if you've felt this yourself, but it's interesting. You go through your handicapping, you do everything like you do. It's every week you're doing the same thing. You have like a pattern, and it's you got to do this, that, and the other thing regarding the trends and the injuries and everything. Everything is lined up, so you're focused on. Obviously, we have new teams, and then you're okay. I like this. This is interesting, and so you also have a pretty good idea of who your teams are, and then you get ready to make your picks, and you make your picks, but then all of a sudden, maybe a few hours go by, a day goes by, and you start to just, as you go through your picks or you start looking at the week, you start to, I don't know if I have a good feeling about this week. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. And all of a sudden you watch that first game. For me last week, it was Memphis and Houston. And I had Memphis as a couple of point favorite, and they were dominating the game, and they lose the game because they give up an onside kick, and they lose the game late. And so I was already kind of feeling, I don't have a whole lot of money in my sportsbook account. I was going to have to replenish it. And I was like, well, I'll just, instead of going crazy and replenishing it, maybe I'll just go with what I have. I won't bet hard. I won't bet really hard this week. This will be a week that I'll just relax. And I don't know what it was. And it actually turned out that way. I mean, I had a lot of bad luck. I had quarterbacks that didn't play that were supposed to play, all sorts of stuff, onside kicks, things. And that's what happens, as you know, Mark, when you have a bad week. Everything just goes the wrong way. But I wanted to bring this up because a couple of reasons. One is that I think this is a good lesson that I've learned over the years, that if you do have that feeling, or if things are just not going real well, it's early game Saturday, and you're just not, your things are just not happening early, and you just got a bad vibe. The worst thing in the world you can do is chase the weekend. And because you're going to have bad weekends. And usually 99, I think, out of 100, when you have a bad weekend, you get off to a bad start. It doesn't mean that you can't get off to a bad start and come back and have a good weekend. But anytime that you have a really bad weekend, you're going to get off to a bad start. So it's up to you to understand that, you know what, that feeling I already had, I'm off to a bad start. I'm not going to chase it. And I didn't. You know what? 20 years ago, I might have chased it.
Well, that's experience, Greg, and that's really, really important, because the worst thing a gambler can do is chase. And like you say, lots of times it starts out early bad results, and then you end up pressing, and then you keep pressing, and you keep pressing, and before you know it, you blew yourself out of the water for the day or for the weekend. An experienced gambler will cut back when he's losing rather than push forward. And to your credit, rather than even cutting back, you just sort of tempered everything, which is exactly what you need to do, because there's always another game being played tomorrow, the next day, the next week.
Next week, yeah.
Exactly right. So you're not going to make all of your profit in one weekend, and you certainly don't want to blow all of your profit in one weekend as well. So, just treat it like a business. And, how would you run your business? You wouldn't do that with your business.
No.
You mistreat it that way, that's for sure.
You wouldn't have money for your employees. You'd be wasting it all.
That's exactly right. Yeah. You'd have Guido coming for his rent money because you had to get a loan from,
to pay your employees. Yeah,
exactly. So run it like a business, treat it like a business. And if you do that, you'll take a proper perspective on the proper way to handicap and approach the game. And I often say this, Greg, and I mean this sincerely. It's more important to be able to manage your money when it comes to sports betting than it is picking winners. And people will look at me and say, "What are you talking about?" Well, that's true, because you could give somebody a slate of 10 games, and inside those 10 games, there can be 7 winners. But if they don't know how to bet those football games, I've seen people that pick 7 out of 10 and lose money.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to do it properly.
Yes.
So that's really critically important. Is money management is, I think, paramount to anybody's success when it comes to sports gambling.
That's why I bring it up all the time, or at least especially early on in the seasons when I try to explain to people about how I have my own system. Everybody has to have their own system, what they're good at, what they're bad at. You can't just, again, for me, I just don't think it's about, or if you're relying on, like you said, if you're relying on someone like yourself to help out with the picks, you can't, it's important to not pick and choose. It's important because if you start picking and choosing, you can end up picking the losers that week, because a successful year for you would be considered what, 65%?
No, a successful year for me would be 57%.
57% even.
Yes, okay. So if I can pick 57% for the rest of my life,
there you go. See?
You don't have a worry in the world, okay? You could do 55% for the rest of your life. You're going to profit, and you're going to make money, and that's exactly what we're looking at this for from a business standpoint.
Yes.
Okay. So, anything over 55% is just gravy. So just keep that in mind too. You're not going to have these 70, 75% weeks after week after week. It just flat out doesn't happen. No. On an occasion you do, but you also have the flip side where you have those 33% or those 20% weeks, and it all averages out in the end. So, be real conservative when it comes to your approach, when it comes to wagering. And another philosophy of mine is also exposure to your bankroll. You want to expose it as least as possible. You don't want to, because you have a good feeling or you're on a good run, you don't want to just roll the dice, if you will, and then all of a sudden that bankroll goes tapioca. You can't do that. That's not how you run a business. That's not how you gamble properly when it comes to sports wagering.
Yeah, and I almost equate it to it's sort of like a NASCAR or golf has a point system as well, but NASCAR might be the best because there's a point system involved, or IndyCar. And what I mean is that, yeah, winning a race, winning weeks is nice. Of course it is. Everybody wants to win a race, win a week. But the goal is the championship. which happens at the end of the season. So
Exactly.
the goal in gambling the football season is you want to come up ahead at the end of the season. So you cannot look at it as a everything is all in. Like, you can't look at, well, if we win the Daytona 500, our season's over. No, it's not. You win it's still one race out of 36. It's a big race, but it's not going to give you a championship. So that's the thing I kind of equated to, and it makes it a lot easier for you to realize that you can still, like, for instance, Ryan Blaney, if I stick with NASCAR, hasn't won a race this season. He's still one of only 8 drivers that has a chance to win championship.
There you go.
And so he hasn't won a race yet, and he can still win the championship. So that's the thing. You may not have even great weeks. Like for me, my situation is a little bit different because I capitalize the most on my double-digit upsets. And for an example, right now, if somebody looked at my record, they'd see I'm 1 game under 500 after my week last week. They'd go, well, how on earth could you be, how on earth can your bankroll be almost $3,000 plus if you're 1 game under 500? Well, that's because I know what works for me. And I have a strategy that I implement, and I have a structure, and that's what I call my point system. It's my cash system. And that's why we talk about everybody needs to have their own. It may not be upsets. It might be, I'm really good at 3 stars. I'm really good at not my top pick, but those middle picks. That's what I'm really good at. Well, if that's the case, then stick with the middle picks as come up with a formula where you feel that, how do I make sure that if I have a really good season with those middle picks, that's going to wind up benefiting me financially by the end of the season?
Well, that's exactly what it's all about, is doing things comfortably from your gut, not from what you're being told, or getting out of your element, out of your comfort zone. And also, you mentioned about, winning a Daytona 500. It's not about winning the battle. It's about winning the war. So you're going to lose battles along the way. And just so long as by the end of the season you win the war, that's all that counts. So don't let one bad week or a couple of bad weeks bring you down and put you into a negative frame of mind. Just remember, you're out to win the war.
Okay, let's do what we promised we were going to do, and that is we're going to take a look at we're going to take a look at each conference in college football. We're going to go through it in a fast-paced manner. We promise it's not going to be like the preseason, but that was the preseason. And let's start first of all on the SEC. And of course, you still have Georgia at the top and Alabama at the top, so no big surprises there. And I don't think we're going to change our minds either as far as Georgia, Alabama in the championship game. Tennessee has the big game coming up. We'll talk about that a little bit later on with Alabama. Mississippi is the only other undefeated team besides Tennessee in the SEC. So if give me a team in there. Are there any teams right now, if you had to pick a team right now other than Georgia or Alabama to win the SEC, who would it be?
Well, obviously, we're gonna throw the chalk or the obvious out, and it's gonna be difficult to overcome that. But you certainly have to look at Tennessee. Okay, undefeated going into Alabama. If they upend Alabama this weekend, we're talking about them. We're not talking about Alabama. So right now, don't tell Tennessee they don't have a chance. They feel they have more than a puncher's chance. So they have to be thrown into the conversation, into the mention here. There's also another team I think. Number one is playing some sneaky good football right now, and I think they're extremely well coached, and that's Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Mike Leach might be onto something there. Will Rogers, as quarterback, is really, really a good general leader for that football program there, and we're going to find out a lot about them this week when they go to Kentucky, because the winner of that game can put themselves into contention to be playing for the South in a Southeast Conference championship game.
Well, if they can beat Kentucky and they're favored to win, I actually have Kentucky in that game. But if they beat Kentucky, they go into the Alabama game next week with just 1 loss in the SEC and a chance to control their own destiny.
What more can a coach ask for? A chance to control his own destiny. That's exactly what every coach lives for.
Yep.
You just hope they don't get caught looking ahead this week past Kentucky to Alabama.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
Mike Leach has got I'm sure he's got a speech for that in the locker room as well. He's never shy for words and never shy for being able to get his football team up. So I think it's going to be a great gauge game this weekend, Kentucky and Mississippi State.
Disappointments, maybe I think I'm a little bit disappointed in Arkansas's defense. I think it let them down. I think they got a tough break in the loss against Texas A&M, and they haven't won since. Psychologically, you could see how much it hurt them on the sidelines when they lost the game, and maybe they just to not be able to upset Alabama when Bryce Young got hurt. They had it there for the taking. They had come back. They were within a touchdown, and then they let the backup quarterback rush for a 65-yard touchdown on 3rd and 15. That was another bone crusher. So they've had some issues on defense, but KJ Jefferson is one of those quarterbacks that you want to get something out of that before he leaves. He's back, by the way, this week against BYU. And on the flip side, Missouri, even though they haven't won yet in the SEC, they have impressed me, and they're headed in the right direction. But like we said last week, they have to start winning some football games.
Well, Drinkwitz is going to need to win to stay around for sure. That's a very, very tough conference to do that in, and he does recruit well. He does a nice job, and I think he's a very good coach. It's just a question of whether he can surface inside this conference here. The team that disappoints me the most, and you might think this is a little bit odd, is Texas A&M.
Yeah.
A lot of people had projected them to be the sleeper of this conference here and to knock teams off.
Yeah.
You go inside. Excuse me, let me put my glasses on and read this to you. This is really kind of unique. Texas A&M. They've played 6 games this year, Greg. They've out-yarded one opponent. Okay.
Was that did they play an FCS team? Maybe.
I'm not sure.
I'll have to check.
Yeah, check that and see. Okay, one stat win this football season here. You can't continue to keep doing that and expect to win games in the Southeast Conference. You're going to be blown away and swept away sooner or later. Do they have that FCS opponent?
Yes.
They did?
Week 1. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So it's most likely 0-5 against FBS teams.
Yeah.
There's Jimbo Fisher for you. So put him down as my most disappointing team.
And their recruiting is still going to be top notch for next year. So we'll see. But they got quarterback problems too. They're not playing anybody this week, but they do have some quarterback issues as far as staying healthy. And I think Brian Kelly, so far, I think they've done a nice job. I don't know what happened last week. I don't think anybody knows what happened last week in the Tennessee LSU game. That was just a crazy outcome. Well, not that Tennessee won, but in the manner in which they won.
Well, it was that the trigger effect for LSU. They gambled early, they lost, put them in a hole. They got the ball back. They gambled again. They lost to put them in a double hole. They never got out of it. So, it was a couple of bonehead decisions by Chip Kelly. And I think he'd be the first to admit that, going for 4th down in your own territory, crap like that. That really.
Yeah, what is he, an NFL coach?
Well, he thinks he is. Okay.
Yeah.
But, it's head scratching to say the least because nobody expected that result last week.
Big Ten and Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, still all undefeated. So not too surprised at this early stage of the season. And that's in the East. In the West, a big surprise. And this is not a surprise to me because we talked about this in the preseason. I felt this was going to be a wide open race, and it's exactly wide open. Heck, Wisconsin is now back in it because of their blowout win. And I don't understand how Paul Chryst, and this is a defensive team, how Paul Chryst gets jettisoned and somehow that wakes up Graham Mertz. I mean, is that what's been holding back Paul Chryst? Graham Mertz is Paul Chryst. I mean, I don't know. It was the game of his life. Now maybe that's one game. It happens when a coach is fired, but that becomes an interesting team to keep an eye on now if they can rally and Mertz actually plays the way that everybody's been waiting for him to play all these years.
Well, a lot of that will probably have to do with how well the players wrap their arms around Jim Leonhard, who I understand they really, really like. Now,
yes.
You could have had a situation with Mertz and other players in the team that just flat out did not get on the same page with Paul Chryst. And to them, his departure was welcome. And it looked a little bit that way in that performance last week. But you look at this, you're talking about this West Division here, from the team that's on top to the team that's in the bottom of this division, they're only separated by one game. by one game. This division is wide open to
Yeah.
anybody inside that. Iowa, the last place team in the division. Come on, give me a break. You know what I mean? So I think that anything can happen in the West. You talked about the East, Ohio State. Obviously, I think the team to beat. Michigan might argue with you about that, but we'll see what happens when they meet later on in the season here. The other team that I would call a surprise, a little bit of a surprise this year, might be the Maryland Terrapins. I didn't expect this much from them with Tagovailoa, the quarterback. I always thought he was like in his brother's shadow in his shoes. I'm not a big Mike Locksley fan, but you look up and my goodness, this team is 4-2 all of a sudden, and being competitive. So I got to give them their kudos here. They'll make themselves into a pretty nice bowl game this year, and obviously, the most disappointing team in the entire conference has to be Michigan State.
Yeah.
Has to be. I mean, I'm sure the regents at Michigan State are not sleeping well at night, knowing that they signed that contract for Mel Tucker,
Yeah.
Which was ludicrous.
Yeah.
Just a knee-jerk reaction. You know what a lot of it was, Greg? A lot of it was not only knee-jerking to what was happening, but also because they were just coming out of all that sexual scandal bullshit that was happening there, and they wanted to paint a different image. Okay, here's a minority hire.
Yep.
All these good things. We're doing the right things here at the school, and it ended up being a terrible decision on their part.
Yeah, so far, and it's a long season, or at least another half a season to go. So they've got to get something rolling to get some positivity, because the recruiting, from what I hear, is okay. So we'll see, because recruiting matters, and maybe he gets one last season next season to try and save his reputation there, and a lot of money for the university. All right, so who are you going to go with? Because I'm sticking with Ohio State, and in the West, I said Minnesota was going to be my backup, and for Nebraska, and even though Nebraska's 2-1, I don't believe in them anymore. So I'm going with Minnesota as the West champ. And the big game this week we'll talk about later on with Illinois. So,
well, you've got two teams inside the West Division that rank number 1 and number 2 in the country in overall total team defense, which is pretty strong. And they're going to meet each other this week, Minnesota and Iowa. If Iowa,
Illinois, you mean?
Illinois, yeah, I'm sorry, Illinois and Minnesota. So between those two, whoever wins this game will put themselves into the driver's seat. As far as Iowa is concerned, they're always a rock solid defense.
Sure.
And Kirk Ferentz, as we've mentioned before, he needs to fire his son. This offense is pathetic. Just absolutely, it gets worse by the week instead of better by the week. And we saw signs of it the first 2 games of the season when they couldn't score a touchdown in either of their first 2 games of the season.
Yep.
And then they enter in a Big Ten play. It's almost an embarrassment to Kirk Ferentz. They need to make that change at Iowa.
Yeah, interesting, because I've been bashing as a Rutgers fan. I do that show for Rutgers, and I've done nothing but talk about how humiliated I am as a fan to watch the quarterbacks that they've been throwing out there for a Big Ten school. And you could say the same thing at Iowa. You could say the same. There are a few other programs you can say that, and this is why I love the transfer portal, because you take a look at Kansas. Their quarterback has a great start to the season. He's talk of the town. He gets hurt. The backup comes in, throws 4 touchdown passes. All right, well, he's good. And then you take a look at what happened with TCU, the quarterback Duggan. He was the backup when the season started. You take a look at, there's a few other examples. Texas Tech. 3rd string quarterback played last week at Oklahoma State. They almost won. He had a fantastic game. So there are these 2nd string, 3rd string quarterbacks all sprinkled around the country that are much better than what a Rutgers or an Iowa or other teams that are in the same. San Diego State is miserable at quarterback. So you would think that with the transfer portal that you have, that those schools would be able to go out and, okay, we'll take you as a 3rd string and put you on our 1st string. So, but it's not going to help those programs this season.
No, and the truth of the matter is while portals help, you still need to do the recruiting. You still need to
Yes, that's first. Number
plant the
one.
seeds.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to bring in recruits yourself that were pedigree quarterbacks that you wanted at your program. If they don't pan out and they transfer out, that's when you begin to push the panic button a little bit and
Yep.
you go out and raid the transfer portal. But it's so vital. I know the world knows that the number one starting point for winning football games is the quarterback on every team, every level.
Yep.
And if you don't get that quarterback play, you're just not going to win football games. So we're seeing some good quarterback play in the Big Ten, not as much as I think we've seen before in the past, which might lead to the mediocrity a little bit in the West Division. But in the East, we've still got Michigan. The two Michigan quarterbacks are both good quarterbacks. The Ohio State quarterback is right there as well. So who's going to win that division? The team with the best quarterback. That's C.J. Stroud from the Buckeyes.
Yeah. Yes, and here's the thing with McCaffrey at Michigan is first 300-yard passing game last week is that, and this is going to be interesting because we talked about the transformation from the spread to more of a power run offense last year, conservative, let's win on defense, then to, okay, well, if we're really going to beat the big teams in the playoffs, we have to have a more multi-dimensional quarterback like McCaffrey. He can make them more dangerous. Okay, now he's just started a few games, but I haven't seen what I think they're capable of. They have, in my opinion, they are loaded at wide receiver. They got one explosive running back and another really good backup. Okay, run the ball. Nice, no problem. But you've got to, at some point this season, start opening it up because they're still doing a little bit too much of the run, pass kind of thing. And at some point, I think they need to take the training wheels off McCaffrey. And hey, if he's going to make a mistake here or two, let him. But I think they're too explosive potentially on offense in the passing game to be settling week in and week out in running the football and playing a defensive type of game. This is not last year's Michigan. I think this is a different team. Whether or not that happens, I think it's going to determine whether or not they have what it takes to beat Ohio State and go on and possibly win a playoff game this season.
Probably a twofold situation for Harbaugh here, with not only the two-headed quarterback, but pretty strong at the running back position as well. So if he doesn't get what he wants out of the quarterback, he reverts to the running game. And it's sort of like, we're devising our playbook, our game plan by the game, by the result, by the week. And eventually that's going to blow up on you. And, whether it happens between now and the Ohio State game remains to be seen. But again, I'm not a big Jim Harbaugh fan. I know he does a nice job recruiting. Their defense is rock solid. But I think sooner or later, Jim Harbaugh will beat Jim Harbaugh.
Let's move on now to the ACC. And Clemson is in a really good position if they can knock off Florida State. This is pretty much it. If they can knock off, because they do play Syracuse next week, but that's still, it's not to be seen whether Syracuse can play with the big boys. So this is the big one for Clemson, because if they lose, now all of a sudden you've kind of opened up a little bit of a door, just a little bit of a door for Syracuse, NC State, and Wake Forest. Florida State really doesn't. This is Florida State's season. They've got. They do have Miami on schedule. They do have Florida on schedule. But this is still the biggest one because they Miami, I know it's a rivalry, but they can win, lose, whatever. I think the Florida game might actually be even more important because that's an SEC team. They haven't beaten them and so forth. But this is it. This is the kind of game that Florida State needs to look next year in the offseason and go, yes, we made a major step up. We won X amount of games, we went to a bowl, and we beat. And it has to be, I think, this. Now, I'm not picking them. I'm actually taking Clemson. But as far as the rest of the teams, they don't have a chance if Clemson beats Florida State this week.
Well, if Florida State beats Clemson and the other way around, it's still not going to put Florida State in any kind of a position in the Atlantic. They'll still be a game behind Clemson.
Yep.
And who knows what Syracuse does in their game against NC State. So they're going to be trailing them as well. So, even if they lose, that's only the first loss for Syracuse inside the conference, whereas Florida State has 2. So Florida State's got a lot of uphill climbing to do. I think they've had a much improved football season here. Mike Norvell's finally getting his players into position and capitalizing because of it. But they still got a long way to go to prove that they belong on the same field with Clemson, and I don't think we'll see that this week.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to blame the coordinator or the quarterback, whose fault it was, but to throw an interception at that point in the game when you have a pretty decent field goal set up already to win the game.
Yes.
Not tie it, to win the game. And then you throw an interception. It's just mind-boggling. It's just not good.
No, it's the kind of stuff that keeps you're up at night. That and another topic which we'll get onto maybe at some point later on down the football road. But it's the head coaching decisions that are being made today. They're absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
So you talk about decisions to win football games. A lot of those are falling on the coaches, and they're not making the right decisions.
I think right now, from what I've seen, I think what we saw the Clemson Wake Forest overtime game, I think is definitely all I need to know about what we've seen this year from Wake Forest. I really believe those are the 2 best teams, Wake Forest and Clemson. And Clemson is just going to be a better team because they play defense, and Wake just doesn't play the defensive type of game. But again, if Clemson loses this week, everybody's tied, more than likely. It's possible that you could have a 2 or 3 game tie. And then we'll see how things take care of the rest of the way. And the Coastal, as usual, still kind of wide open. And all of a sudden, Georgia Tech.
Whoa.
Yeah, Georgia Tech is actually in the Coastal race after firing Jeff Collins. They've won the last 2 games. They look like a completely different team, which is just weird. I don't know what's going on there. I'll have to find out if they keep winning games. But, Miami's been the big disappointment. I thought it was so funny last week before the North Carolina game. I was reading some articles about how, like, Mario Cristobal had to explain why he was going back to Van Dyke after benching him in the loss to Middle Tennessee State the game before. It's like, why is this a discussion on whether Van Dyke's playing? This kid's got the talent to be a potential first-round draft pick, and he has a bad week with bad receivers, by the way, so it's not all his fault. And you're putting all the blame on him? Like, he needs to now take the seat? I mean, I don't know what that was about. He played a little bit better. The team played a little bit better, but still lost to North Carolina. So, yeah, they're still a very disappointing team right now, and I don't know, maybe Pitt could still be the team to beat when it's all said and done. North Carolina, though, is on top at the only undefeated team in the Coastal.
Yep. Mac Brown still alive in the races because he's got an offense, not much of a defense, but he can outscore you on any given day. And I'm going to agree with you on Miami of Florida being the most disappointing team in the conference. Virginia might have got a little bit of a vote there, too, well. With Brennan Armstrong being back in, no offense at all. This team has gone completely backwards offensively.
By the way, you want to talk about, why coaching matters. So they take the offensive coordinator, goes from Virginia to Syracuse.
Yep.
And look what happens to Syracuse and their offense this year. And look what's going on at Virginia. Now, look, understand what's going on. They hired the new coach who is an offensive coordinator with Clemson. So I get that. But that switch for Armstrong's sake, I mean, he's the one that really is the injured party here, because he lost the coordinator that made him look like a top quarterback, and now he looks like one of the worst quarterbacks in the conference.
He looks lost because the offense is not centered around him. Primary reason. But I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in here on Miami of Florida and Tyler Van Dyke. I don't usually watch a lot of college football games from start to finish in depth, but I did last week's game because I'm down here in Miami. I wanted to see the Canes, and the Canes were in a bad situation to bounce back after laying a bad egg as a 20-point favorite and losing the game before, to see them blow again, and they did. But in watching the game, the thing that jumped off to me off the page is Tyler Van Dyke is not a very good quarterback. Okay? He alone, could have brought that team back and didn't. His passes were sailing over wide receivers' heads by 5 and 6 feet. he's not right. He's not the same quarterback that we saw
Yeah.
last year.
I
Now,
think it's a coaching change too.
it could be
I
the
don't
coach
think he
thing.
fits the offense of Josh Gaddis.
I don't think he does at all. And you've also got, like you mentioned, some wide receivers that really aren't up to speed or up to par for where they should be at this level of a football program. But I mean, he had so many opportunities at the end of the football game to pull a victory out,
Sure.
and he just choked. He just
he doesn't look right. Yeah, he's not comfortable.
No, he's not at all. So, now when it clicks and he gets there, you can look for Miami to go on a little bit of a run because he will then have found his rhythm. So watch out for that. If he has that one good game, that could be a springboard for Miami moving forward.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You bring in these guys. He's a Broyles Award winner, and you think everything's going to be okay. But if the quarterback doesn't fit the system, it's just you see the results because Van Dyke last year looks 10 times better than he looks this year.
Oh, he entered this year in the Heisman Trophy race.
Yes.
One of the quarterback candidates, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Louisville's also been a little bit disappointing. And they're back to being 500. They did win last week without Cunningham, which was huge. It's probably saved their season. But, I think they just expected maybe Satterfield to push this program to where maybe you see NC State and even eventually Clemson. But that's just not happening.
No, and as a result, he ends up being on the coach's hot seat here right now, does Satterfield, and rightfully so. I mean, it's been now 3 years now. A lot more has been expected what he's delivered with this football program here, and you're talking about a team in Louisville that there were some high hopes for in the beginning of the football season. They're sitting in last place in the Atlantic Division inside the ACC. So there's no excuses here. He's got to start winning football games or he'll be out on the unemployment line as well.
Big game this week. Rivals, North Carolina, Duke. So that could have a lot to say what's going on in the Coastal. Give me your pick in the Coastal.
This is a real wide open. If I told you Georgia Tech, you better get to a doctor right away.
Okay, you never know. You never know.
No.
It's the Coastal. Stranger things have happened.
It is. I'm not going to use Pittsburgh because they won last year, and they could be a little bit semi-tired. I'm going to go with Mac Brown. I think he's got the little mojo going there right now. I'm not keen about the defense, but he can light the scoreboard up, so I'm going to ride with Mac the Knife.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that they just, I don't know, it's all offense. I mean, and he's lucky he's got that shoot coordinator who's done a tremendous job. He's not going to stay there very long. Unless Mac Brown says, I'm going to be here for 5 or 6 more years, I could see Shoop then saying, all right, I'm not waiting 5 or 6 years. Because he should get a head coaching gig next year. But if Mac Brown says, I'm only going to be here for a couple more years, then I could see Shoop hanging around, becoming the next head coach in North Carolina. But
hey, Greg, I got news for you. Okay, Mac Brown will be happy just to say he's on this earth in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so that's not surprising. All right, let's move on to the Big 12. And again, we said this in the preseason, that this could be a wide open race. We said that it could be teams playing in the championship game with more than one loss, and I'm not going to change from that. I still think we're going to have at least one team potentially in the championship game with 2 losses. It's just too competitive. And now all these teams are still yet to play each other. So all these teams nobody's good enough to run the table. They're just not. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun watching these Big 12 games over the next month and a half.
Look at the standings from top to bottom here, Greg. You see the top 3 teams: Kansas State, Oak State, TCU, all undefeated. Okay, having a real nice season, 7-0 combined. Look at the bottom 3 teams: West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, combined 0-8 on the season.
Yeah, Oklahoma and Iowa State.
Are you kidding?
In the Big 12 championship game last year.
Yeah, and they're both sitting in the cellar this particular football season.
And they could both win 3 straight. So you just don't know what's going to happen. So
this is the conference. It's much like the NFL used to be labeled on any given Sunday. In the Big 12, it's on any given Saturday.
And we picked Kansas State as the nice sleeper, and so we're not changing our mind now, especially that Adrian Martinez has woken up. He was just, I don't know what was going on there, but then since the Oklahoma game, things have been a lot better. TCU, we mentioned Duggan. I mean, I got to tell you right now, and this is something we'll throw in there as well. I would put him in the Heisman candidate conversation. That's how good he's been. Now he's got to be a guy like that at Kansas State. You can't lose though. He's going to probably have to go undefeated, which isn't going to happen. But another big chance this week because it's TCU and Oklahoma State, and I believe that's game day. I believe so.
I believe it is, although they did at Kansas last week. They did
Yeah, they did it last week, but I think it's Oklahoma State. I think so.
Oklahoma
I'll
State.
double check, but I think I heard it was going to be Oklahoma State TCU, but I'll double check.
Well, there's so many good games that they could have landed at this week anyway. But let me tell you a quick little sidebar story about Kansas State here. One of my real good friends who owned one of the largest offshore sports books in the world, we got to know him and some of the players and everybody down there. Well, he's from Philadelphia, and he knows the Eagles really rather quite well. And Jalen Reagor was the #1 draft pick by the Philadelphia Eagles and one of the biggest busts ever. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jalen Reagor blames Max Duggan for him having a poor year in his senior year in his final season at TCU. And that's why he didn't go #1, 2, or 3 in the draft. He was drafted in the later part of the first round.
Oh.
You talk about the egos of these football players here. Well, Jalen Reagor is barely hanging by the threads with a job in the National Football League these days. But he's got a finger point at people like Max Duggan to blame for where he's at today. It's just absolutely incredible.
Now you know why players fail.
Yes, exactly right.
That's why it is important to make sure you don't just draft players based on stats or talent. Or 40 times you got to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, they have to have something upstairs.
Are they going to be a team player and all that other stuff? By the way, game day, I should have realized it's actually going to be at Tennessee.
Oh, that's the place to be.
Alabama, Tennessee. Yep. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But anyway, the Oklahoma State TCU game is going to be huge because they're taking on right to potentially be in first place. Kansas State, meanwhile, who does Kansas State play this week? Do they play this week? No, they're off this week, I believe. Kansas State, right? They're off. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them. No, and there's quite a few teams that are off this week.
Yeah, it's off. Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
Right, and will be next week as well. Right.
Who do you like? Championship game. You still like Kansas State, I'm assuming. Who else do you like?
Well, I do not. I can tell you the teams I do not like. I do not like Texas. Okay.
Really? Okay.
No, I'm not a Steve Sarkisian fan at all.
Neither am I.
I think a sleeper team might be Texas Tech. This football team is not going to yield to anybody.
Even with 2 losses, you still think they can come back? Okay. Well, they have to run the table at this point.
That means they'd have to run the table. Yeah. Exactly right. So I think they're a 2-loss team that has the potential to do just that. Amongst the other, you could say no losses for TCU, but I think they're going to take their first loss this week personally. Amongst the other 1-loss teams, that leaves the Baylor Bear, who's the defending champion. I don't think he's going to get back there again. So I think this thing is wide open, and I do see Kansas State playing Oklahoma State for the championship.
Wouldn't it be something if, just taking a look quickly at the schedule, wouldn't it be something if the last game of the regular season you had Kansas State and Kansas for the right to go to the Big 12 championship game?
How sweet would that be, huh?
Wow. Who would have thought? Anyway, so let's move on to the Pac-12. And I think it's great what's going on with UCLA. I really do. And this is not a joke. They are for real. They are playing great football. And you know why they're playing great football? Because they have a veteran quarterback who's been with Chip Kelly now for four straight seasons since he was a freshman. So he knows the Chip Kelly offense, the back of his hand, and that's perfect. And then you have one of the top running backs in the country in Charbonneau. So you have a dynamic quarterback that is getting the job done. You have one of the best running backs, and they are just playing exciting, really disciplined, all around, big clutch plays when they need it type of football. And I think it's great. It's good for Chip Kelly. I'm not a Chip Kelly fan or I'm not against him. I know he took a beating after he went into the NFL, and it was almost like he had become a joke for a while there. And even just a couple of years ago, he was still considered a joke while he was at UCLA. I think those are great stories, and I'm glad to see that he's kind of had a little rebirth. And next week, he will go back to Oregon in a major, major matchup between UCLA and Oregon, which is going to be great to see. And I know that one will not be on the Pac-12 network.
That will not be. No, that'll be on a major network.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not going to hide that one.
Right, that's where it'll be. Exactly. You've got in this conference here, Greg, you've got the 3 teams you mentioned, Southern Cal, UCLA, and Oregon, all undefeated right now. I'm looking like two of those three teams are going to make it to the title game. There was a team up until last week that also I thought figured into the mix. It would have been the Washington Huskies, but
Oh, what happened to them?
they look like they backpedaled a little bit here. Doesn't mean that they're not capable or dangerous, and they're
Sure.
probably the type of team that neither UCLA, Southern Cal, or Oregon want to meet somewhere down
Sure.
the road for
Yes.
anything at all. But I think it's got to be between those three teams,
Or
and
Utah.
I'm going to rule out Utah. Okay,
So you think USC beats them this week?
I think USC beats them this
Wow.
week.
Okay.
They've got that big bullseye in their back from winning the Pac-12 championship last year. They're playing like it. They've got some major injury concerns right now. Utah does. I don't think they're even close to where they were last year. They could upset somebody in the final week of the season and ruin somebody's season, but I just don't think they're going to make it to the championship game this year.
Oh yeah, I mean I agree with that. I do like them against USC, but I do not think they're going to the championship game. I think it will be between those three undefeated teams. And if I had to pick a team, I have to pick it right now. See, it's just like we said with Kansas State, just for just the sake of whether you want to say tradition or just great college football. Unfortunately, it's not the last game of the season for either team, and I don't know why. I don't know why they changed that, because you have USC playing Notre Dame at the end of the season now. I don't know what that's about. I just don't. I don't understand why USC and UCLA are not playing at the end of the season. But whatever. When they play, second to last game of the season, that could very well determine who plays. And who knows? Maybe they could still, the loser may still be able to play and get redemption in a rematch. Because, again, there's no divisions. So it's the two best teams in the Pac-12 will face off in the championship game. And I'm not counting out Oregon, because they have really, how could they have not impressed you but with what they've done after getting just killed by Georgia week one, not even looking like they were prepared. It looked like it was going to be a long season. Even though we know how good Georgia was, it was still not good for Oregon. And yet they have done nothing but win since then. And most of the wins have been impressive.
Well, let's flip the script here, okay? And let's give them the win over Georgia, although it wasn't even remotely close. But let's just say in a fantasy world they beat Georgia to open the season, and now suddenly they're 6-0 along with UCLA and USC. Those would be three viable teams that we'd be talking about making the championship playoff game.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Not just the Pac-12, but the college football playoff championship game. So this Pac-12 is the most improved conference of all the Power Fives, head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, they're still a year or two away before they can get back to one of these teams. And I hope Chip Kelly. See, the problem is Robinson will be gone, and Chip Kelly's got to start all over again. And that's with another quarterback, and Charbonneau will be gone. And that's so maybe there's a pinnacle, and then it's going to kind of rebuild. But with USC, you just know with Riley there, that's just a matter of time. Could be a year or two, but he will get USC back to where Pete Carroll had them. Now, whether or not he can win championships or not, I think he can, because he's going to get talent there at USC he never could get at Oklahoma. But it's going to still take a few years.
Well, the difference being that he has the ability to get the talent, and he will get the talent, but the talent that he brings in here is going to be competing in the Pac-12, not in the Big 12. So he brings this talent in here. They're going to be far superior than other teams in the conference. Yeah. Hence, Lincoln Riley will rule the Pac-12.
Yeah. All right. Now let's. So who are your two teams?
I'm going to say USC and UCLA.
Okay, I can see that. I'm going to go ahead and say I'll say UCLA and Oregon.
Okay.
I say we'll get a rematch with next week's game in the championship game. Okay, now let's go to I'll tell you what, just quickly with the independents, because we're done with the Power Five, and let's talk about Notre Dame, and because that game last week, that was to me a very disappointing performance from BYU. Good going for Notre Dame though, because they were able to right the ship over the last couple of weeks after looking pretty bad early. But BYU, see, here's my take on BYU, is that I think every once in a while, especially when you get, call it lucky or not, or fortune, when you're able to get the quarterbacks that they've had there the last couple of shots with Zach and now with Hall, then you're going to win some games. But Kalani Sitake, who's been there for 7 years, to me, if you're trying to, and I know they're not going to make any decisions like I would, but if you're trying to be like a Boise State, you're trying to be like Cincinnati, You want to actually play like Notre Dame. You want to play with the big boys. You want to play and get to the playoffs. You are not doing it for Kalani Sitake. He's not that type of coach.
No, first of all, his name sounds like a mushroom, a bad mushroom, you know.
Yeah.
And I was never a big Kalani Sitake fan, maybe even up until this year, because I thought he was a large cheerleader in the sideline. He kind of like was an Ed Ogeron kind of a coach to me. But I got to give him his due. You know, he hasn't let the program drift south at all. You know, he's kept them fluid, and he kept them relative.
Yep.
And you know, we knew coming into the season he had the most experienced team of all the FBS teams this year. 4-2 in the season. You know, yeah, 4-2 is a good year. Maybe in that regard, with all that experience, it's a little bit disappointing. And you surely would have loved to have seen that upset win over Notre Dame. That would have been the big feather in their cap. You know, they then would have been the best independent football team we're talking about now, instead of Notre Dame. So, you know, give him what it is. He is what he is. He'll end up being an 8-win team this year, and Kalani Sitake will be back for another year with the Mormons next year.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you're coaching an academy team. You don't have to have the aspirations the fans have. Oh, we want so much more. No, they just, or like Stanford even with Shaw. Those types of schools are just content with, hey, if you can win games, and Sitake's won games and go to bowls every year and get that paycheck. Yeah, that's what they want. That's it. They're not looking for national. I mean, you know, if they can get one, that's great. If they can get one every 20 years, they'd be happy if they get a playoff berth. But you know, he's done what he needs to do to keep his job at Brigham Young. So, and then really nothing else in the independents except the fact that I do think you have to applaud so far what Jim Mora Jr.'s done at Connecticut. Not just because they get to win over Fresno, because that was a banged up Fresno team, but this is a banged up Connecticut team. I mean, he's got loads of injuries. He just lost his running back again. He has his top 3 running backs gone out, who get the other running back at this year, but he's got his top 3 running backs out. His starting quarterback got hurt when the season began. I mean, he's had loads of injuries on a bad team, and they're one game under 500. So I think we all knew that was a great hire when the season began, but you know what? It looks like he might be getting that Connecticut program back on their feet, which is nice to see.
You know, if they make it to a bowl game this year, Greg, you got to put him in coach of the year.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean,
yes,
it's been a really, really nice turnaround for this program. They're no longer a doormat. You know, they have to be respected. Now, maybe they're not quite there yet, but tip of the hat to Moore. I think he's done a great job this year. I agree.
American Athletic, AAC, and Cincinnati still looks like the team to beat. But, you know, you have Tulane, you have Central Florida, and then you have a few other teams that are all kind of beating each other up, or you would think will beat each other up. Look, it looks like Cincinnati, yeah. They're going to more than likely be there again. Part of that, I think, is because some of these other teams have not at least made it interesting, like Tulsa or East Carolina. They've been a little bit disappointing too. But Tulane has been the one team with Willie Fritz, and it's been kind of disappointing to see what's gone on in the last couple of years, because we were big Willie Fritz fans, and he did a really good job instantly when he got there. It's a nice little rebound season. This is another team, by the way, that lost its top 2 quarterbacks, went to their 3rd string quarterback, and he led the comeback win or the big win. I believe it was over Houston, and had a game-winning touchdown pass in overtime. That's just a great job. And what do you think? You think Tulane and Cincinnati in the championship game?
I think they're the 2 logical contenders right now. Yes, you know, Central Florida is really, really capable. We know that. You know, and they could end up being in the picture themselves. I don't know if in amongst those 3 teams how much of a round robin they have left of playing one another. That's going to probably be the biggest determining point of who will win or who will make it to the championship game amongst those 3 teams. But I would certainly be stunned if it's not Cincinnati, at least one of those 3 teams in the title game.
Yeah, Cincinnati will be at Central Florida in a couple of weeks, and they will host Tulane to end the season.
That'll be a big game.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm probably going to go that way. I'll probably go because East Carolina, I think, with 2 losses early, I think they just and they have some road games that'll be tough in the division in the conference. I think it's going to be tough now. So yeah, maybe we'll see Tulane because that, and I hate to see that if it is Cincinnati Tulane because they may play each other in back-to-back weeks. You never want to really see that. So
No.
all right, next up, the
disappointing team.
What's that?
Most disappointing team.
Oh yeah, most disappointing team would to me right off the bat it very well could be East Carolina. I'm not going to say Tulsa, so I'll say East Carolina, or I might even say South Florida because South Florida, I expected a little bit more from them, but they've either gotten blown out or they've almost beaten Cincinnati and Florida. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Well, you're thinking more of them from a point spread standpoint where they were supposed to be much, much better this year. But I think my most disappointing team to me is easy. It's the Houston Cougars, who continue each and every year to keep underachieving under Dina Holgerson. And you mark this down. If this team does not finish with a winning record this year, and they're only 500 right now, if they don't, he's gone. He signed that big contract, and that big contract was based incentively on getting Houston into the Big 12 conference, which they've done. So he got that bonus, okay? But here's a coach who got that bonus and all that money who could be gone before they even make it to the Big 12 if he doesn't get his act together.
Yeah, they're the worst team in college football in penalties. That just shows you how undisciplined they are, and they've been pretty much at that point all season. Yeah. They should be 0-2 in the conference. They won last week. Handed to them, made the comeback, but they did it because they got the onside kick at the end of the game. All right, now let's go to the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt has been a really nice they have just progressed and progressed and progressed, and they just keep getting better and better and better as a conference. And this is even – we both like Coastal Carolina when the season began, and they're undefeated. They're going to lose because Grayson McCall just can't keep bailing them out late in these close games. Sooner or later, they're going to lose. But in this division is so tough too that you think that you're going to still get maybe some teams beating each other. You got James Madison, Coastal, Old Dominion, even Georgia State's not out of it. And App State's got 2 losses already in the conference and the division. So, but I think it's still down maybe to those, it could be still down to those top 2 teams, Coastal and James Madison. I think James Madison is just a little bit better right now.
Well, the new kids in the block, they're really outperforming everybody's expectations. I was really expecting this, honestly, because of where they came from and also the fire in their eyes having made it this far. I think they're going to struggle a little bit this week against Georgia Southern. I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. But what you've got in this conference here, they are the fun in the sun guys. There's a lot of good football that's being played here right now. They've expanded. They feel like they have extra muscle in what it is they're doing here. App State, one of the best teams in the conference, has got a losing record. Go figure that out, okay? Or I should say they're 3-3. They don't have a winning record.
In the conference, a losing record, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Crazy.
So, they're a little bit of a disappointment because so much was expected from the football program here. Marshall's a big disappointment. They came into the Sun Belt Conference, and they've really underachieved. They have lost both of their Sun Belt games.
And they beat Notre Dame.
Yes, they did. And that might have been their undoing. Doing something just like that. All of a sudden you think you're somebody you're not. On the other side, you've got a little bit going on there. Louisiana Lafayette way down this year, but, they do dispose of Marshall on Wednesday night, so kudos to them. They could end up rebounding back that way. And South Alabama, everybody's got them in the championship game, if for no other reason. It appears to me that the West is the lesser.
Yeah, we talked about that in the beginning of the season. Yeah,
exactly right. Exactly. But they do stand out, those South Alabama.
I like Troy, too. Troy has impressed me this year. I don't know if they'll keep that up. But South Alabama does seem to be, and remember, they almost beat UCLA. So it's not a surprise. They've played really good football. So, so they do look like they stand out. So who do you think? You're going to go with James Madison and South Alabama?
No, I'm going to run with Coastal Carolina.
I like it.
Yeah, and South Alabama.
By the way, Coastal and James Madison will play the final game of the regular season at James Madison.
Oh, boy. That Coastal's got to go in there and win a game if they want to make it to the championship game. Yeah. That could be tough.
Hey, my boy Grayson McCall, the spotlight will be on. I wouldn't want to be James Madison.
Yeah, that would really have to be a must-watch football game. I got to
Yeah.
say that. I look forward to that for sure.
Yep. All right. Conference USA, and it's kind of last year UTSA was exciting and everything. We really got behind them, and that was great. And they're the king of the conference once again at this point. But we still have a long way to go. I just don't trust UAB. I think we've seen that already. They'll still win games, but I don't think they're capable without Clark of getting to the championship game. So I've been touting Bloomfield at Rice for a couple of years now, and it's happened. So they've finally started. It's sad the way they have to play like in front of 5,000 people in that stadium, and I get it. It's Rice football. I don't know if they can keep this up the whole season. I didn't predict them to be in the championship game, but it does look like still UTSA is the team to beat.
I think they are the team to beat until they're beat. That maybe not quite as good as they've been in the past, but still, I think the best team inside this conference here. North Texas is showing a little bit of moxie right now. But you look at the overall win-loss records of every team in the conference, nobody stands out. I mean, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think UTSA is the only one in this conference that has a winning record. Maybe Rice?
Overall,
overall.
Rice and UAB.
UAB. Okay, there you go. So not a lot of winning per se inside this conference, but a lot of what I would call parity inside this conference here. And I think UTSA, until proven otherwise, is indeed the team to beat.
Yeah, and I mean North Texas, I think they might be able to. They could get there, the championship game. I don't think they'll win it, but I think they could get there. I think if Rice is going to actually be for real, I think they have to win this week, which I think is possible at Florida Atlantic. They have to really prove themselves on the road. But Western Kentucky, maybe we get a rematch from last year's championship.
There's the sleeper team, Western Kentucky, that everybody kind of wanted to trash because Bailey Zappi was gone. Yeah. Everything they did, all those records they set. But, my goodness, give this team their due. They're playing some really good football here right now. And at 500 in the season here, they'll make a push to become a winning team by the end of the year.
Two more to go. First, let's take a look at the Mountain West. And in the Mountain West, in the Mountain, Boise is the team at top of the division, even though their coordinator was fired, their quarterback transferred and basically quit. Utah State, of course, Bonner, the quarterback, out for the year with the injury, so that's big. Even though the backup actually won the bowl game and played last week and helped with their upset win over Air Force. So we know how good a coach Anderson is, so they're not going to go away. Air Force, I think, might be a little bit overrated. They've had some games where they don't look as good as we thought they were going to be. But I'm still not totally sold on Boise. It's their defense that's riding them. They don't have much. They have a running back, Holani, and that's it. They don't have a passing game. It's defense and the run game, which might do it in the Mountain. So, yeah, I think Boise maybe. I don't know if there's another team that can possibly compete with them. Maybe it's Utah State.
Well, what's the most surprising thing to me about this conference in the Mountain Division is the worst team is sitting up tied for the top of the division. That's Colorado State.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
My goodness. I mean, 1-4 in the season. Their only win was their last game, and they're not going anywhere. Believe me, they're pathetic. So it's by default who gets up there. I think Air Force, is going to push their way and drive themselves to press Boise State, who's really a little bit of an enigma this football season here. They look sometimes good and sometimes really bad. I don't think there's a lot to like inside this Mountain Division, inside this conference here, and I think that's the weaker of the two divisions.
And in the West, you have San Jose State, it's nice to see that they're back. They had a little bit of maybe it was a championship kind of deal where they won the championship, and then last year maybe everybody was after them. But they're back to playing the kind of football that they played a couple of years ago. Brennan's done a fantastic job there. Love and look, talked about a potential sleeper in the beginning of the season with Arroyo at UNLV, and it's happening. But if they're for real, then they're going to have to prove it this week against Air Force. San Diego State, like I said before, their quarterback situation is so bad, it makes Rutgers' quarterback situation look good. So they're not going to go very far. They were lucky to beat Hawaii last week. Lucky. And Fresno, unfortunately, I don't know how much longer they have to wait for Hainer to come back. I just don't think he's going to come back in time. So San Jose State, they look like the team right now that looks to be clearly the best team in the West. And matter of fact, I think they're right now the best team in the entire conference.
Well, they could arguably be just that. I don't think by season's end they will be, because I think the team they're going to play for the championship out of the West is going to ultimately end up being that team, and I think that team will be Air Force.
Oh, okay.
By the time push
So
comes to shove,
you believe in Air Force?
I believe in the Air Force. Yes, I do believe in the Air Force. When they're good, they're really good, and they've had a couple of slop bucket games, but I think overall they have the most talent inside the conference. And I look for them to take on San Jose for the marbles in the Mountain West.
All right. And in the MAC, everybody's favorite conference, they'll be starting to play those weekday games soon. So in the East, Buffalo. I mean, when the season began, they looked as bad as any team in the MAC. They just didn't look good. But all of a sudden, they've had a few breaks along the way, and it's opened things up. And now they're at the top. One of the breaks is having Miami's quarterback out for the year. So that's majorly damaging. Kent State is still a team that has potential. Unfortunately, they lost to Miami last week, and that was a tough loss for Kent State. And now they got to play Toledo this week. So I don't know. I think Buffalo might end up I mean, they're already 3-0, so they might be in a really good situation to hold on in the East.
Well, they could do just that. The problem is the East is the least when it comes to these two divisions, and the West isn't all that good.
It's the MAC.
This conference is way down this year, Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, way, way down. Who comes out of the East on top here? I think it's a coin flip. I really do. You mentioned Kent State. They had the ability. But,
by the way, Buffalo, Kent State will play final game of the regular season in Buffalo.
I'll go so far as to say the winner of that game will be in the MAC title game representing the East.
And in the West, it looks like it's Toledo's at the top, but I think Eastern Michigan's got a shot, because the last couple of weeks, a couple of weeks ago, after the Arizona State game, they had that let down, embarrassing. Well, it was kind of an embarrassing defensive performance, but they just were flat in a way when they got beat up by Buffalo. It was a high-scoring 55-35 game. Then they had an ugly slugfest, low-scoring affair with UMass. So they had two bad games in a row, but the quarterback was not around. And I think the letdown from the Arizona State game hurt them in the Buffalo game. Not having their quarterback hurt them in that game against UMass. But then Powell came back last week, and they upset Western Michigan on the road. He's back, and I still think Eastern Michigan has a chance, but Toledo does seem to be the clear team to beat.
Well, you hit it right on the head about Eastern Michigan. They and Toledo are the only two teams in the MAC conference with winning records this year. Toledo looks to be the superior team amongst all the teams, and I think they're going to be very, very difficult to beat, because you build with momentum a lot in the MAC conference, and I don't see anybody that's mediocre or worse tripping up a Toledo football team from here on out. So has Toledo played Eastern Michigan yet this year?
No, they're going to play in a few weeks.
Okay, well, then that will probably decide the winner of the West. And the winner of that game will most likely then be in the MAC Conference Championship game and win the MAC Conference Championship. So keep an eye out for that Toledo Eastern Michigan game. That will be huge.
Yeah, Ball State. Their back-to-back wins were pretty impressive, because they had that overtime win, which was really wild game against Northern Illinois, and they followed that up by winning on the road against Central Michigan. So maybe they got something going on at Ball State. We'll keep an eye there. Mike New, he really needs a big season too there to prove that he still belongs there as head coach. But kind of disappointing what's going on majorly with Central Michigan and Northern Illinois this season.
Yeah, I mean,
Jim McElwain at Central Michigan, and Northern Illinois lost Rocky Lombardi a month ago, and that's definitely hurt him a little.
Yeah, this MAC is way down. Jim McElwain's football teams are usually good. They're not this year. And it's not that they're not good because everybody else is better. It's just they're flat out not good. This is a conference that, come bowl season here, the winner of this conference might be the only team in a bowl game. I'm going to go maybe so far as to say that.
All right. Before we move on and go over the games this week, futures, and we're not going to, there's no time to change now, especially because Bryce Young, we think he's going to be okay. So we're still going to go with Alabama winning the championship this season.
I've got Alabama winning the championship this season. Yes. So even if they stub their toe somewhere down the road,
Oh yeah, they'll go to playoffs.
yeah,
Yeah,
they'll go to the playoffs. And if they get to the playoffs, that's all they need. Just open the door and let them in,
yeah,
and they'll take care of business from that point forward. They're probably better off to stub their toe before
you're right. Yeah,
the SEC championship and build the momentum moving forward. But they're indeed going to be the team to beat when the college football playoff rolls around.
and as far as if you had to pick, like, let's not pick Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, or Clemson. Who would you go with?
Well, that's going to be difficult. Then that would mean to me that Michigan beats Ohio State, and then it has to be Michigan. If somebody beats those teams, Greg, any one of those four aforementioned teams you just talked about, and knocks them off to reclaim or claim their division, that could be the team that barges through. Michigan's got that possibility. I'm not saying that they're worthy.
Sure.
I'm saying they have that possibility to do something just like that. The Southeast Conference, it's always wide open, obviously, because of the talent within the conference here. But if Tennessee pulls the rug out on Alabama this week, okay, then that will have been a loss for Alabama and a scare for Alabama in the A&M game.
Yes.
And suddenly Alabama is not, they're not Superman anymore. So that's a huge, huge factor here. And if Tennessee pulls that rug, then I think it just completely apple carts the whole playoff picture here. So if it's not any of one of those four football teams, it probably can't be anybody out of the SEC because you've got two teams already in there. You're not going to have a third here, obviously.
No.
So I would say the other team that could barge through might be Southern Cal out of the Pac-12.
The way I'm looking at covers, and I'm looking at their futures, and I've never seen it like this before. So they have, like, if a team is plus 3,000, is that 30 to 1?
No, that would be plus 300 to 1.
Yeah, because that's I can't be right then. That's why I'm confused about. I've never seen it like this before. It says Alabama's plus 200, Clemson is plus 1,200, which I'm taking is 12 to 1.
So in the Alabama plus 200, if you excuse me, if you put up 100, you win 200.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it has to. Okay, so yeah, so Michigan surprisingly is 30 to 1.
Yes.
That's surprising.
Yes.
That they're 30 to 1. That's a good value.
Yes,
they have Tennessee at 100 to 1.
There's good value there too. I mean, it's all coming before the Alabama game.
Yes.
And Michigan before the Ohio State game here naturally. But that's when you want to get in on these long shot puppies is the Tennessees of the world, because before they upset Alabama, you're going to hold on a big ticket, a big price. If they don't win the game, you can tear the ticket up. But if you're going to roll the dice, you do it now with the Tennessee football team.
Yeah. Of course, you're not going to get a big money line on Tennessee, Alabama this week.
No.
So you might as well, if you were thinking about it, you might as well just put it on them to win the national championship. Because if they win this week, then they have a serious chance of potentially making some noise.
Yeah, they'd have to beat Georgia to get there, but nonetheless, they'd have a chance. Right?
Yeah. Oregon, Oklahoma State are 40 to 1. UCLA's 100 to 1. Penn State's 60 to 1. Ole Miss is 60 to 1. I don't know why Texas A&M is still 25 to 1. I mean, they're not going anywhere.
Wow.
They should be 5,000 to 1. I mean, there's no chance for Texas A&M to go to the playoffs with 3 losses already. So I don't know what that's about. Anyway, all right. Let's now do what we normally do and go through the games this week. We're going to do it a little quicker so we can pick up the pace. And of course, the big thing is the quarterback situation with Bryce Young in Tennessee in the Alabama-Tennessee game. That's the reason I can't pick it. So. And I don't even know what do you think the line is thinking at 7? Do you think they believe Bryce Young is playing?
I believe they think Bryce Young is playing, yes. Okay. And it's there because if in fact he confirms that he is playing, it gives them room to move up a little bit off of that number here. You can't go any lower than that with Alabama laying less than a touchdown. So it's at a safe number right now. And just remember this, that at the beginning of the football season, Alabama was projected to be a double-digit favorite in every football game they played this year. That comes to a halt here in this Tennessee game. Now, whether it's because of the quarterback situation or because of Tennessee playing as well as they are, it's arguable, but they are not the double-digit favorite that everybody expected this year.
Yeah, I think if Bryce Young plays, I would take Alabama at 7 or even 8. I would take Alabama. If he doesn't play, I would definitely roll the dice on the money line with Tennessee, because that kid is going to have to go to Rocky Top in a mad environment, and it's completely different to start in that situation than at Alabama. Plus, it wasn't like he looked all that great on the road his first time he played, and I know it was off the bench, but no. So it's, to me, it's all about Bryce Young. If Bryce Young plays, Alabama. If he doesn't play, I'm taking Tennessee in the money line.
That's the way to look at it. Unfortunately, you can't place that bet on that.
Not today. No, I could do it just before kickoff, though.
Exactly right.
So I'll be paying attention. All right. Who do you like in the game, by the way?
I have to play Tennessee plus the points here. You get
no matter who the quarterback is?
I think no matter who the quarterback is, I'll take the adjustment if and when Young plays and maybe grab 8.5 or 9 or maybe even 10 points in the game. But I will still play Tennessee in the football game. Just because of the environment. I've been to Neyland Stadium before. That's imposing in there, that stadium here. I mean, you got 110,000 people that look like they're all breathing down on top of the players. And you feel like if you're an opposing team here, everybody's got their eyes on your every move and what they do there. So Tennessee finally has a chance to step up and deliver the goods. They've been promising to do that for 10 years now. They haven't done it. We'll see whether or not they're able to play well this Saturday.
Big Ten, of course, the big one is Michigan and Penn State. And let me just, oh, by the way, before I move on, I did want to bring this up because this is important with the Alabama game. And that is what the not just Bryce Young, but McCullough, the McCullough kid for Tennessee, the defensive back who was arrested. So he was arrested, and the story is very, I don't know. I mean, it's just, we're led to believe, I guess, that somebody just got lost, that went to his car, came back, found it, and we're in the, I guess, the housing community, went into the wrong housing door community, I guess, or the wrong side of the housing complex, knocked on the door, nobody answered, it was open, he let himself in, I guess thinking that it was his friend's room, found out it was this Tennessee kid's room, McCullough, and apologized and walked out. And then we're led to believe that McCullough just, I guess, went ballistic and ran after him and beat the shit out of him.
Wow.
So I don't know what to, now they arrested him, and he had they had a picture of his hand. It was all bandaged up, I guess, from punching the guy, or who knows what he did. But it's not all, we don't know the story. I mean, that's just so weird. I don't know what to think. But anyway, it's a distraction. And the other thing, keep in mind, this is another reason why I like Alabama if Bryce Young plays. Believe it or not, Tennessee is 128th in the country in pass defense. So McCullough is actually one of their leaders in the secondary. And if he winds up being suspended, Bryce Young could have a field day. But, you never know what's going to happen under those circumstances because it could distract the team. Who knows? And we don't even know if the kid is going to be suspended yet. Right.
But all good notes to keep an eye on for sure.
Yes, definitely. Things you definitely want to make sure that you keep alerted to. Okay, let's go to that Big Ten matchup between Penn State and Michigan. And we still have 5-0 Fat Cats, by the way, Mark.
Yes, we do.
And Penn State's a 5-0 Fat Cat dog,
yes,
which is always the way that you'd like to go. Unfortunately, that means you have to wager on James Franklin against a good football team on the road.
Well, you have to do that. But, if there are situations that Franklin's good in, it's as an underdog off of a win, which is he's on a roll. Basically, what it comes down to with him is when he's winning, he often goes on win streaks. So you've got the 5-0 Fat Cat dog working there. But what you also have here is Jim Harbaugh in a horrible role. And, I keep wanting to shoot holes at Harbaugh. But if you take a look at him, and I'm reading this here from our midweek alert statistical newsletter, which is really just jam-packed with a lot of great statistics and information here.
And you can pick that up on the website at playbooksports.com.
That's correct.
How much is that?
It's $15. Or, better yet, all 3 of our newsletter publications, the playbook, the midweek, and our total tip sheet, 3 for a quarter, all 3 for $25. Goodbye. But anyway, we're talking about Jim Harbaugh here, okay? In his career, in games against undefeated opponents, 2-11 to the spread, and including 9 consecutive point spread losses in a row. So, favorite, okay?
So was he in that situation last year? What was that again?
Jim Harbaugh, in his career, against undefeated football opponents, I said favorite. I don't believe he even has to be favored. I just think he flat out sucks. 2-11 to the spread with 9 straight consecutive point spread losses in a row.
Okay, when he's undefeated or when he's playing a team that's undefeated?
When the team he's playing is undefeated.
Undefeated. Okay.
Yes, right.
Well, Ohio State was undefeated last year. That can't be it.
Oh,
right?
no, let me, here, I'm going to reread this and phrase it properly. Jim Harbaugh in games when both teams are undefeated. Okay? He's 2-11 to the spread.
2-11. Okay, so he could have then. So last year when they played Ohio State and they covered, that could have been one of his 2 of 11.
That could have been one of the two, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's why I stood away from the game though. By the way, because I think you have these. For me, I could see these conflicting trends. Because I could also say yes, he covered that one of them last year, and I think they're a different team now with Harbaugh than he was the previous years. Plus, the favorite in the series with Penn State has won 8 straight and 7-1 against the spread. So whoever's the favorite in this series has dominated the last 8 years. And then throw in the fat cat though that works in Penn State's favor. Plus the fact that I just, like I was saying with Michigan, I was saying with McCarthy before, I don't trust that their offense is that open yet, that it should be, that they could be giving these types of big spreads away to really good football teams.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's, the intrigue in the football game. I'm more enamored with this fat cat dog who's
Sure.
on a real nice momentum run here
Last
right
week,
now.
who did we have? We had Kansas. We had UCLA.
Yes.
Did we have any other dogs in that spot last week? I don't remember. I don't
think
know.
those are the 2 fat cat dogs.
Dogs that are just like Penn State. Yep.
Correct. This week you'll have Penn State, and this week you'll also have Oklahoma State.
Okay. And we'll get to them in just a second. First, the ACC, Clemson and Florida State. We talked a little bit about that already. And like I said, look, the deal for me is that, and I've picked against Clemson a few times this year, but Clemson is just a 3-point favorite in this one, basically. That's almost like a win. And I'm sorry, but they're just better than Florida State. And if I only have to give up 3 points, and I just think after what I saw at the end of that game with Florida State, North Carolina State, Norvell's a good coach, but is he a Dabo Swinney type coach? And what I mean by that is Dabo Swinney can say what he wants, but the guy in major games just always seems to come up big. And this is a major game. It's a night game at Tallahassee. The place is going to be going banana. So I feel comfortable as this is going to be one of my top plays of the week.
Well, I've been on this Clemson run all season long. I'm not jumping off, especially against a Florida State team, as you mentioned, could come flat as a pancake in this football game. It's a step-up game for Florida State. We talked about it earlier. They're 2-2 behind, with 2 losses behind Clemson inside the division here. This is Dabo Swinney on a statement-making season run here this year. The last 8 times that he's been favored in Florida State against them, he's won all 8 games straight up and only lost to the spread 2 times. So he can handle this role at Florida State and Tallahassee, laying points here. I think he continues his winning run and takes out Florida State on Saturday again.
Last trip to Tallahassee was 2018, and they won 59-10. That shows you how bad Florida State was at one point.
Yes.
Not so long ago. Spoke about Oklahoma State and TCU in the Big 12. That's the big one there. And TCU is a 4-point favorite. And you've got the 5-0 Fat Cat against the 5-0 Fat Cat Dog. So you got the double whammy working in Oklahoma State's favor. And I also like Oklahoma State in that one. Plus, because I get 4. Because I could see this game being a 3-point game. I could see this game being a very close game. But here's the one that really puts it over the top for me. Oklahoma State 10-1 against the spread in their last 11 as road dogs. TCU 4-11 the last 15 as home favorites.
Let's peel that all back and go back to the beginning of the dissertation here. The 5-0 Fat Cat dog playing the 5-0 Fat Cat favorite. Mix the two together, the dog is 18-6 against the spread in these games. That's a pretty strong number, okay? Put me down on the dog on Oklahoma State in this contest here.
We disagree on this one. This is the big one out of the Pac-12. We talked about it before. I'm taking Utah as a 3-point favorite against USC. First time USC is a dog this year. And a couple of reasons why. Trend's definitely a big here. Utah 15-5, last 20 against the spread as a home favorite, including 2-0 this year. They're very good at home. And USC 1-9 against the spread. Their last 10 as a road dog. Also 0-12 against the spread. Their last 12 is a road dog of 8 or less. But what puts it over the top for me, and the reason why, part of the reason I liked Washington State last week, and I can't believe they scored 14 points in the second quarter and couldn't score one more point or two, one more like field goal or touchdown to cover the game. But, and by the way, they did have two big injuries, which we'll talk about on the College Football Extra report, which is the reason I like Oregon State this week. But is also because I just think that USC over the last few weeks, they haven't played, they had that Oregon State ugly kind of win. The Arizona State game was kind of almost tied at halftime. And then last week, it was an okay win, but it's still, they were a double-digit favorite. And it just wasn't, wasn't anything that you just blew your mind out.
Right.
Oh, wow, the USC team is really awesome. So I think that they're vulnerable, and I think this is a spot that they're gonna get caught in a spot where Utah at home has just been so good.
Well, it's a nice spot for Utah as far as game setting up goes, off a loss, Southern Cal off the win. But I'm going to point this out from that very same midweek alert newsletter.
All right,
all the statistics. Okay, Southern Cal is one of only 10 teams in college football this year that has won the yards in every game they played. And if you take a look at Lincoln Riley and what he does best in games when he has the better record in matchup of his team against the other team, and Lincoln Riley's team has a better record. He's 45-5 in those football games. He very seldom trips up in games against inferior opponents. And today, going into this contest here, we would have to say Utah would be the inferior opponent, given the fact that Southern Cal's undefeated. And Utah's got two losses on the season here. So I'm going to take that 45-5 and that 10-0 in the stats record with Southern Cal and play them as what I would call a live dog.
Now let's move on to the most under the radar games of the week. And this week we zeroed in more towards the Power Five because there wasn't a whole lot of really good Group of Five games this week for whatever reason. So the top 3 under the radar games for you to choose, and this is which game would you want to watch the most? Arkansas, BYU. So it's a nice matchup. You got KJ Jefferson, you got Jaron Hall. You don't usually see these two teams play each other. Big game, by the way, for Arkansas as well, because they got to get a win. Minnesota, Illinois, we talked about that before. The huge game in that division in the Big Ten. And NC State and Syracuse. Nice little under the radar game because I don't think anybody realizes Syracuse is undefeated.
Yeah, 3 really, really intriguing football games, if you will. You look at the first one, Arkansas and BYU. Actually, BYU opened up the favorite in this football game, and I was really a little bit stunned. In fact, so stunned to the point that we tabbed Arkansas as their upset special this week. Southeast Conference team, a dog to an independent football team. It just didn't smell or feel right. It has since switched over to Arkansas, the favorite in the football contest here, largely because of the pedigree, is what it really truly is. They're not playing their best football right now, Arkansas, but there's a lot of intrigue.
Well, they get KJ Jefferson back, and that's important. Very important.
Well, that's the biggest reason for the move, okay? That's the biggest reason. The Minnesota-Illinois game, we talked a little bit about it earlier, the number 1 and the number 2 ranked defenses in the country this year. That's a little bit surprising. We have a feature in our Playbook Weekly Football Newsletter called the Smart Box. And inside the Smart Box, the feature is called Deep Six. And basically what it amounts to is teams that take off, I believe it's on the road off of one-loss exact are really good. That's Minnesota in this particular role. And the other game, NC State and Syracuse, I can tell you this, that at the beginning of the football season, NC State was ranked number 14 overall in the AP preseason top 25. Syracuse was not anywhere near to be found in the rankings. And in fact, I went back and looked at to see what the spread in this game would have been in week number 1. That's based on our power ratings in our newsletter, and they come from Kenny White in Las Vegas. He was the one-time odds maker in Las Vegas. He's very, very sharp. First week of the season, NC State would have been a 14-point favorite in this game.
That makes sense.
Yes. So
Yeah.
look at the swing and the dramatic swing in this contest here, because Syracuse has gone undefeated. NC State has 2 losses here. So intrigue in all 3 of the football games. Are you asking me which one I want to watch the most,
Yep.
or which one would I be interested in betting the
If
most?
you only watch one.
If I can only watch one, well, then I would watch NC State Syracuse to see whether or not Syracuse is living in a fantasy world or not.
Yeah, I keep in mind, because this one I went back and forth at and decided to stay away from it because of the quarterback situation. Leary is not going to play, so you go to this Chambers kid who put up a lot of numbers at Charleston Southern, I believe, but he came into the game against Florida State last week and he didn't look very good to me. But I'm just going to put that towards pressure and not expecting to be in the game and all that, because supposedly you can't put all those yards up the way he did, even at any level, and look the way he did. So I think that he'll look like a better quarterback. Plus, they're the dog, like you said. That's the thing that was like, they're still a dog. Why are they a dog against Syracuse? They're a better team. So
Right.
if Syracuse is going to prove it, they're going to have to prove it. Go ahead and prove it. And as a fan, you almost want them to, because it's a nice story. But it's sort of like the Clemson game. I'm not rooting for Clemson. I'd like to see Florida State win. But you have to still go with your head and say, well, I'm only giving 3 with Clemson, and I'm getting points with NC State.
Again, a step-up game for Syracuse. We'll find out whether or not they can step up. They did save Dino Babers' job this year. I'll go so far as to say that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're going to win this football game or not.
And like I said, they great hire bringing in that coordinator over from Virginia.
Yes.
Doing a great job. NC State, by the way, 13-2 all time against Syracuse, and they're the 3.5-point dog. This is a 5-0 Fat Cat too, Syracuse.
On top of it, yes,
On top
they
of
are.
it, and
Yes,
check
sir.
out Syracuse schedule: NC State at Clemson next week, Notre Dame at Pittsburgh, Florida State at Wake Forest.
Oh boy,
So you think they'll be 5-5 in 5 weeks?
no, that's a possibility.
So then let me ask you, if you had a wager on one of those 3 games, which one would it be?
I take the points with NC State plus the points. I think that's
Same game.
The most value on of the 3. Yes.
All right. Now let's go to the. By the way, in that Minnesota-Illinois game, I would have taken Illinois because I said they were my sleeper team out of the West this year, and they've obviously made me look good, and I've made some nice money on them so far. But I also said I like Minnesota, and I hit big with Minnesota a few weeks ago at Michigan State, even though Illinois is better. But this is the reason. If you look at the trend here, Minnesota has covered. They're 5-0 against the spread. Let's see. I think they're 5-0 against the spread. Their last 5 as a road favorite. PJ Fleck is 6-0 all time against the spread on the road when he faces an opponent that's 800 or better winning percentage, and 7-0 against the spread. Last 7, this is Minnesota, as Big Ten favorites of 13 or less off a double-digit straight-up loss. Keeping in mind, Minnesota had a really big letdown performance a few weeks ago before their bye. So a lot of trends definitely going towards Minnesota in that game. But it's a big number. It started off at 4.5 and it jumped to 6.5.
Yeah, that's a big number. It's gone out of the play range. What I would say, if that game started at 4.5, when it went to 3, I start making some pretty good cases for Minnesota in the game.
And another thing that I'll talk about later on the College Football Extra report is the injuries, key injuries. And there is a key injury, which is another reason I can't take Illinois, because DeVito is probably not going to play. And that is one of the reasons that I liked Illinois as a sleeper, because they were going to have a decent quarterback this year for a change. Unfortunately, he got injured in the last game, so they might be going back to Art Sitkowski at quarterback in the game against Minnesota, and that's usually not going to be a good thing.
Yeah, the kid from Rutgers. In fact, there was a time when Tommy DeVito didn't play for Syracuse. It was a good thing. So
there you go.
We'll see how it works out with Illinois this week.
Before we go to the NFL, let's talk about my double-digit upsets this week, and I have a lot of them. I have 6. It's just the way it turned out. Okay, so I don't say, okay, I'm going to take 2, 3, 4, just take what I like, and it turned out 6. So one of them is tomorrow night, or depending on when we post this, Friday night. Navy over SMU, they're getting 360. Then on Saturday, we have Old Dominion, 360 over Coastal Carolina. Akron, 4-1 over Central Michigan. Indiana, 330 over Maryland. Texas State, 540 over Troy. And UNLV, 3-1 over Air Force. So out of those 6, which one do you like the most? And a little bit of a teaser. We have our logo represented on this screen.
Well, of the games you mentioned here, I'm going to ride with Navy plus the points against SMU here, Greg. And one for a scheduling dynamic. If you take a look at SMU, they're coming off of Central Florida, but they got their biggest game of the season on deck next, if you will, against Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Yes. So you bring in Navy in here, a football team that has improved somewhat.
Oh, they have been. It's amazing. They went. They start off so bad. They lose to an FCS team. Even they go over to the bye. They come out of the bye and they're a completely different team.
They're a great different football team since the bye. But from a point spread perspective, Navy 15-0 to the spread as a dog when coming off a win. That's a pretty strong number. That's a pretty strong number. So I'm going to play them plus the points. Now, whether you're going to get your straight up win here or not, that's questionable. But I think from a handicap standpoint, I like Navy the best of your group.
Yeah, I was thinking about 5-star because I have 300 on my 5-star, or should I go with, because it's similar with the 360? But I went all out on Navy to pull it off. Keeping in mind that if you look at it, last year, Navy upset Central Florida at home and Tulsa on the road as double-digit dogs. So last year they did it. They could do it this year. Matter of fact, I hit the Tulsa game last year. So that's probably why I'm going back to them this year. It was a night game, too, last year. And I think it was a weekday night game that they pulled off that upset. And SMU 0-3, straight up and against the spread in their last 3 games. So that's I'll talk more about those double-digit upsets and the reason why I like them on College Football Extra, which is going to be coming up in just a few seconds. Because before we do that, we just want to remind everybody you've got the markers on the bottom of the screen. So if you are not interested, and I just couldn't imagine why, you would want to bypass my College Football Extra report, but whatever. If you're just in love with Marc and you want to see and hear everything that Marc has to say, including his expressions when he doesn't even talk, then just check the bottom of the screen, the markers, and you can find out exactly where we pick things up again.
Greg, those expressions when I don't talk, those are back from my television days. And I was always told, don't sit there like a dummy, act like you're alive. So that's a lot of my expressions. Okay.
And so let's do that. College Football Extra and be back to talk NFL. All right, let's get going. Week number 7. And as you can see, you've got the injuries up there. I've separated them from Group of 5, Power 5, Power 5 at the top, Group of 5 on the bottom. And those are all my picks. NFL College, if you're interested. Again, the experts at handicapping games. That's Marc. That's Victor and those guys over at Playbook Experts. Check them out. Playbook Experts. They have the new YouTube channel. And also, if you enjoy watching this particular report, this particular show, please subscribe to our channel. It's the best way to make sure that as soon as these reports are available, you will find out and be able to check them out, especially when we post them on Fridays like today. All right, let's go through it. Starting, I tell you what, for a change, we'll start in the NFL, okay? Because there are some trends that I want to throw in there. I know we're going to get to the NFL in a little bit, but there are some trends that we're not going to cover coming up. That is the fact that I do like Cincinnati, and they've covered 3 straight games, so I like that. Remember, they covered the game last week against Baltimore. Meanwhile, New Orleans, how about this? 2-8-1 against the spread. Their last, actually, it's all time. All time, 11 games at home versus AFC North teams. So take that how you want to. Baltimore and the Giants, and a couple trends we are going to talk about, trends that we're not. Here's one. The Giants are 0-7 against the spread in their last 7 off back-to-back straight-up ATS wins. They've already done that this year once, and in the game 3, they lost both the game and the cover. That was the Cowboy game. So there's that. Next up, let's talk about the Jets and the Packers. And the Jets, actually, how about this one? The Packers have covered 8 straight as a favorite, taking on an opponent off a double-digit straight-up win. How about that? All right. Next up, in the Patriot-Brown game, the Browns have lost 3 games this year by 6 total points, which is crazy. Brissett, by the way, in case you remember, he came into the league as a Patriot quarterback. Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 0-4 straight up, 0-3-1 ATS last 4. That's not good. But the Bucs are 0-3 against the spread in their last 3. So that's not good either. Next up, let's talk about, I don't know if we're going to cover this or not, but Seattle has beaten Arizona 2 of the last 3 times they've played and covered those 3. This is a different Seattle team, though. So take that however way you want to. Carolina Rams. Carolina 1-4 straight up ATS on the season. Rams 0-4 against the spread at home. But the Rams have covered 5 straight at home off a straight up favored loss. Carolina, meanwhile, they have conflicting trends. They've covered 7 straight on the road, taking on an opponent off back-to-back straight up losses, with their last game being as a favorite like the Rams were last week, but 1-10 against the spread. And their last 11 as a road dog of 4 or more, taking on an opponent off a straight up ATS loss. And finally, let's talk about the trend in the Denver Charger Monday night game. How about this? Denver has beaten the Chargers 5 of the last 8 straight up ATS, all as dogs. This is going to be the 9th straight time these two teams will meet as Denver as the dogs. Russell Wilson, 0-4 straight up, 0-3-1 against the spread on the road in his career against AFC West teams. And that includes the loss against the Vegas Raiders earlier this season. So that's the NFL. Okay, college football. Let's see. Auburn, Ole Miss. Auburn 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 on the road. Ole Miss 0-3 against the spread at home this year. Auburn has beaten Ole Miss 6 straight times, covering 4 of those 6. Arkansas 0-3 straight up ATS last 3. BYU 0-4 ATS last 4. KJ Jefferson's back, by the way, as we have there on the report. Nick Saban is 15-0 lifetime against Tennessee. Keep that in mind. I'm sure they'll post that in the preview. Tennessee 4-12 against the spread in their last 16 as a road dog. This is the first time they're as a home dog. First time they're a home dog this year. So there's that. And Tennessee, here's some bad ones for Tennessee. 2-14 last 16 home against the spread off a straight up win of 14 or more. 0-1 this year. And 0-15 against the spread as dogs of less than 14 after they score 35 or more. That's pretty bad. That's a combined 2-29. And I said before, I like Alabama if Bryce Young plays. If they don't, I don't care about the trends if Milroe plays. I'll take Tennessee in the money line. LSU, Florida. LSU's beaten Florida 3 straight, including the last 2 years as dogs at 23-12. They're only a 2.5-point dog this week. Florida 0-3 as a home favorite this year against the spread. 0-10 in their last 10 against the spread, taking on an opponent off a straight-up loss. 0-1 this year in that spot. Brian Kelly's 28-10 all-time against the spread as a dog versus sub-875 winning percentage opponents. Mississippi State, Kentucky, the home team in the series has won 7 straight up and against the spread. How about that? That says take Kentucky, which I'm going to. Not the main reason, but it's a good one. Kentucky is 2-0 against the spread as a dog this year. They've won 1. They almost won a second. Don't forget, they almost won that game at Ole Miss. First time they were a dog at home this year. Mark Stoops just 8-15 though against the spread off back-to-back losses. In the Big Ten, the favorite in the Michigan-Penn State rivalry has won 8 straight. I think I talked about that. Covered 7 of the last 8. Michigan 10-1 against the spread in their last 11 before taking on Michigan State. That's kind of a weird one. Minnesota, Illinois. We talked about some of these trends, but here's one. I'm not sure we talked about. Illinois is 7-1 last 8 home versus 800 or greater opponents. Of course, these are all against the spread. But 1-13 last 14 at home versus an opponent off a straight-up ATS loss. And they're 0-1 this year in that spot. Let's go with the fact that Wisconsin has only played Michigan State twice since 2013, so this is not really a rivalry. But Wisconsin has beaten Michigan State the last 2 straight-up ATS by a 68-6 margin. Let's move on to the ACC. And Miami, 5-12, last 17 as a road favorite. Virginia Tech, 10-2 last 12 as a home dog with revenge after a straight-up ATS loss. We are taking the Hokies, by the way, in this game. I just don't like Miami in this spot at all on the road. Syracuse, NC State. And one thing I'm not sure actually, there's one I don't think we mentioned. Syracuse, 1-10 against the spread in the last 11 as dogs of less than 6. Actually, NC State, 1-10, last 11 as dogs of less than 6. Taking on an opponent with a winning percentage of 400 or more. Let's go next with North Carolina and Duke. I am taking Duke in this one. There's some injuries to keep an eye on there. UNC has beaten Duke the last 3 years by 38-7 last year. And 56-24 in 2020. So that's a combined 94-31 in the last 2. So it's only been 3 years, but they have dominated the last 2. North Carolina just does 1-7 in their last 8 as a road favorite, and they're 0-1 in this spot this season. Taking on the Big 12, and Oklahoma has beaten Kansas 17 straight times, all as double-digit favorites. It's going to be single digits, but it's still 9. Again, no respect for Kansas, none. And I know they got the backup quarterback in, but still, the backup quarterback proved last week he can play. So I still think that there's just no respect. Oklahoma 0-3 straight up ATS last 3 this year, including the last 2 by a 104-24 margin. And Oklahoma's 9-point favorite. We're taking ISU, and you know what? It's not at one of our double-digit upsets, but I might actually think of throwing a couple of bucks maybe in a parlay with that, because you never know. Matt Campbell, still, because of the tie last week, 24-8 against the spread as conference dogs, including 16-3, taking on an opponent off a win. So that's still a good mark by Campbell. And keep in mind, Iowa State's lost 3 straight up ATS this season by a total of 11 points. They got a really good defense. They've beaten Texas 3 straight times, by the way. And they're a, 16-point dog now almost? Texas, how about this? 3-13, last 16. As a favorite of less than 27, off a double-digit ATS win, taking on a 500 or less winning percentage opponent. Yeah, that's almost a 6-1 money line, by the way, Iowa State. Let's now move on to the Pac-12, where Washington has beaten Arizona 5 straight, covered 4. They've won 5 straight. Arizona has covered 4-5, though. We're taking Arizona in this one, and the 14. Stanford and Notre Dame, if you look at this, Notre Dame has beaten Stanford the last 3 years, straight up ATS, by a 128-55 margin. Stanford 1-6 the last 7 as a road dog, 0-2 in that spot this year. Let's see. Let's move on. By the way, Colorado's playing their first game with a new coach. They're coming off a bye. So just keep that in mind. They're 0-5 straight up and against the spread this year. But with the new coach, I always stay away from those kind of situations, or I try to. Oregon State, Washington State. Washington State has won 8 straight against Oregon State, including the last 2 years as dogs. And they're a 3-point dog in this one. But Washington State has some injuries. Oregon State had a big win last week. Remember I say I rarely take these games when one team dominates the other? The ones I do are usually like this. It's only a 3-point spread. So it's not like they're 6 or 7 or 10. And again, I've backed and done a pretty good job with Oregon State over the last couple of years. So that's the reason why I'm going to go ahead and give them a shot. Again, it's a very important game. Plus, like I said, Washington State, look at the injuries. They got a couple of key injuries this week. Tulane and South Florida. Tulane 17-2 against the spread. Last 19 is a favorite of less than 11 off a double-digit ATS win. That's pretty impressive. By the way, they're 4-1 against the spread this season. 5-1 straight up. Memphis 0-11 against the spread. Last 11 is a road dog. 0-1 this year in that spot. 0-10 under their head coach Silverfield. That's why East Carolina is one of my 3-star picks. I think East Carolina is a better team anyway. Navy, they're taking on SMU tonight. And Navy 2-1 straight up. 3-0 against the spread. Last 3 since the bye. And that loss was by 3 at Air Force. They've covered 15 straight as dogs off a straight-up win versus a losing team. I do believe Mark mentioned that. In the Mountain West, Utah State head coach, 12-1 straight up and against the spread in conference games off a straight-up win when his team has a 500 or less winning percentage. That's pretty impressive. Colorado State just 2-6 ATS, last 8 home dog. New Mexico, I think they're a lot better than New Mexico State. That's why I'm taking them. It's only a 6-point spread. They beat UTEP, and they were on a roll, UTEP. They led UNLV by 17-0, lost the game. Led Wyoming 14-0, lost the game. New Mexico State is not UNLV or Wyoming. And New Mexico State is 2-10. Last 12 as a home dog. 0-1 this year. Let's now move on to... Tell you what. No more. Well, if you want to know why I took the Hawaii, by the way, money line, 2-1 money line. Nevada 0-4 straight up, 0-3 against the spread in the last 4. The reason that they're just 0-3 because they played an FCS team and they lost. So they lost to Colorado State. That's as bad as it gets, and an FCS team. And Hawaii almost beat San Diego State last week, so that's why I have Hawaii this week. Let's go with. Troy, Texas State. Now, Troy, I said before, I like the season they're having. And they have a big game next week at South Alabama. But I think Texas State might be able to surprise them this week because they had a 30-3 lead last week and App State beat them. But that's pretty convincing. They're not a bad... This is a team that's got some potential, Texas State. There's a big game in this division. To decide who might actually be in contention for a Sun Belt championship game. Troy 0-7 last 7 and second of back-to-back home games. So if you're just worrying about the spread. And they're 1-8 last 9 off a double-digit straight-up win when they take on an opponent with revenge off of a straight-up ATS win. ULM at South Alabama. South Alabama has covered 8 straight at home versus opponents with a 3-3-3 or less winning percentage. That's ULM. And they're 6-0 in their last 6 as a home favorite since 2019, South Alabama. Still a big number, 17. ULM, by the way, upset Alabama. South Alabama last year was a 13-point dog. But they're just 3-12. Last 15 is a road dog. 0-3 this year. Not a bad play. I didn't take them. But it wouldn't be a bad play to take South Alabama this week. I was thinking about it. I might regret that one. Let's see. Conference USA. UAB 0-9. Last 9 is a home favorite of 7 or more after they score 35 or more points. They're giving 23. I don't know why they're giving 23. I was going to take Charlotte. I stayed away from it, but I don't know why the spread's so high. I don't think it should be that high. Western Kentucky head coach Tyson Helton is 14-2 straight up ATS. When he takes on teams off a straight-up ATS loss, it's 2-0 in that spot this year. They're a 7-point favorite at Middle Tennessee State. Let's see. Rice, 3-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread in their last 4. 3 of those were upset wins of 10, 10, and 17. They're a 4-point dog at FAU, who's lost 3 straight. FAU 1-10, last 11 at home after they allow 35 or more points. We're riding Rice. We've been riding them for weeks, as you know. And in the MAC, Akron's one of our upsets. Central Michigan has scored 47 points in the last 3 games, yet they're given 13.5 in this spot. Joe Moorhead is 1-0 against the spread as a home dog this year with Akron. And Central Michigan is just 1-7 in their last 8 off a straight-up conference favored loss. They're 0-2 straight-up ATS as a favorite this year. I just don't like the direction right now Central Michigan's going. Moorhead just got there. They're heading somewhere. I think he's going to do a good job overall rebuilding that program. It's going to take time, but they're headed there. Buffalo, 3-0. Straight up ATS last 3 this season. Big matchup. They host Toledo next week. 17-point favorite against UMass, who's covered the last 2. They do have a lot of injuries, though, UMass, with their skill position players, so keep that in mind. Ball State, 2-0, straight up ATS last 2. First time they're favorite this year, though. They're a 9.5-point favorite against UConn, who's won 2 straight, covered 3 straight. And Toledo has covered 8 straight versus losing MAC teams. 2-0 this year. It's happened over the last 2 weeks. We like, actually, Toledo this week. And NIU is 0-5 straight up versus FBS teams this year. We're taking Eastern Michigan minus the 2. We're also taking Ohio Pick'em against Western Michigan. The Broncos are 0-3 straight up ATS versus FBS teams over the last 3 by a 113-42 margin. Also, 2-7-1 ATS last 10 is a home favorite. It's now a Pick'em, though, so keep that in mind. But who knows? Maybe they become a home favorite after all. But I think Western Michigan, if things go the way they go, they might be looking for a new head coach. Might be time for a change. All right, so that'll wrap it up. Hope you liked it. And it was a lot faster than we have done it over the last few weeks. So I'm happy about that. We will be back again with this report next week. But we're going to go back to the show where we're going to talk some NFL. Fantasy football also coming up a little bit. And remember, the Fantasy Football Report is not just fantasy football. There's a lot to digest there with key injuries and players who are up and down, and that correlates with the teams. So it's still important in my mind because that's how I use it. I use it as a way to both get inside fantasy, but use it as another tool to handicap games. So anyway, check that out because those guys at Draft Sharks do a great job. And if you check out Draft, what it's awesome too, if you're into the injuries, there's 2 things they do at Draft Sharks, which is awesome. You can go to our ledge, you go to the fantasy section, and we have all the Draft Shark stuff. And if you go there, there's 2 things. One, they have an injury indicator. So basically, they have past injury information on players, which is awesome. You can find out an injury history about just about any player in the NFL. And they also have just constant updates during the week on key player injuries. So if if you're interested, where do I find out good NFL injuries? Well, go to Draft Sharks, man. On a daily basis, they're talking about it, and they're also giving you information about it. They're not just saying so-and-so may be playing, questionable, whatever. They're saying, all right, here's the deal and why. So check that out. Again, they do a great job. So back to the show. Let's talk some more NFL. All right, we're back. So let's talk NFL. The big news this week in the NFL, because the last few weeks in college football, we were talking about coaches being fired and all that kind of stuff. Well, this week, it's the NFL and the coaches being fired. The first coach to be fired, Matt Rule, not a surprise, I guess, if you were going to pick a coach to be fired, Mark. I did have an opportunity to speak to Rashad Beard, who does a great job with his YouTube channel covering the Carolina Panthers. So check that out, and you can check out the interview I did, which was yesterday. It's posted up on the channel. You can also check out the links in the description area, so you can go directly to his channel and subscribe if you're a Carolina fan. All right, so we talked about it, and the big deal, and Rashad had told me this in the offseason too, that the big issue with Carolina is really the owner. And he gets involved, he meddles too much, and he's too much wanting to be part of the team, almost like a mini Jerry Jones. We don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. There is a lot of talk about Sean Payton. He has a stipulation in the contract with the Saints, though. So he cannot find a job until 2024 unless the team that brings him in gives some compensation to the Saints, which would mean that Carolina probably have to give up some draft picks if they want to hire him next season, as early as next season. Or maybe they give Steve Wilkes the opportunity to be the head coach this year and next year, and then they just wait for Sean Payton in 2024. I don't know if they're going to look outside Sean Payton or not. We'll see, but it was overdue. Matt Rule got carte blanche at Carolina, almost like he was this proven superstar coach at the NFL level. He had done a nice job at Baylor and Temple, but that's still not Alabama or, the NFL. And he was just in over his head. And there was just too much of Matt Rule it was almost like Josh McDaniels in his first go around. He was in complete control of everything and should never have been. Now he's doing it the right way with the GM that he can work with and so on. But this is a mess, and it starts and ends with the owner, and they don't have a franchise quarterback yet either.
Far from a franchise quarterback here. That's where the problem really begins. It's ironic that I read somewhere where Baker Mayfield now has, in the last 3 years, has been with teams that have had 4 head coaches that have been fired.
Oh.
Yes.
Well,
so, whose
fault that is.
Yeah. Just too much coincidence there for me. The Sean Payton thing is not going to happen in Carolina. First of all, they live in the same division. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to, if you're in New Orleans, you're not going to let that happen. You're not going to send that asset to your competitor.
Well, you're going to say you're going to have to give a couple first-round draft picks.
You have to give a lot more than just that, right?
Or they're going to have to wait. They got to wait a couple of years.
Exactly. So that's why I think it's not going to happen. So we'll see what happens in the offseason here. But, right now, they're a team in disarray. A good defensive football team, but no offense whatsoever.
Yeah, that's why Wilkes, he's got a realistic chance. He did not get a real chance at Arizona. So this is another chance, and we'll find out whether or not he can make the most of it. I think Sam Darnold Rashad said he could be back in a couple of weeks. Not that that's going to all of a sudden mean that Carolina's going to the playoffs, but
no,
at least it'll be better than P.J. Walker, which is what they're getting this week.
Or Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, he'll be back in a couple of weeks, so
right.
Maybe Sam can get back sooner than Baker. Okay, last week there were just so many crazy things happen in the NFL. It's just amazing. And the one that I was irritated the most at was the one that I had my upset special on, which was Arizona over Philly. I just could not believe what Kyle Murray did at the end of that game. I just can't. And I can't blame Kingsbury because Murray didn't even look his way. It's like, first of all, he runs the ball, which is nice, but the first mistake was he could have went left towards the sideline and stopped the clock, or if you're going to go this way, you better pick up the first down, and then he does what you never do as a quarterback late in games, and that's slide. I mean, nobody does that. No quarterbacks do that anymore. You just can't. I mean, that's you got to put your life on the line late in the game. You cannot slide.
Yeah, when every yard is critical.
Yes, so he slides, and on top of that, he gets up, doesn't look at the sideline. He just gets up, tells everybody get that. He's doing this, and then he gets the ball and he just chucks it. So what are you doing? It's going to be 4th down. So I don't understand what he's doing at times. Yes, he's a talented kid, and he steals these games every once in a while against bad teams because he's a talented kid. But that one was a killer.
They need to put that clause back in his contract where he has to study the opponent in the playbook between games each week, because he looked like he was just totally a quarterback for the first time in his career at the end of that football game. That was incomprehensible and no excuse whatsoever for that.
And then, of course, the refs had a terrible Sunday. It became the big story with the late hits. or the so-called late hits. It didn't affect Kansas City, but it affected Atlanta. Now, I was happy in a way because Atlanta it secured my pick, but it felt bad. I mean, if I'm an Atlanta fan, I'm irate. I just couldn't believe they did that. Now I guess you can believe it. And then again, we saw it on Monday night with the Chiefs and so forth. So I don't know if that's going to continue. I think the message has been sent. I got to believe that these officials are going to think twice before, making those calls again the rest of the season.
Well, they're under this edict to protect the quarterback at all costs. So the thinking kind of gets skewed along the way. And I think they're playing for the Roger Goodell and his offices rather than doing what they're paid to do, and that's just ref the game on the football playing field here. And we're seeing some really strange calls. I mean, not only by the referees, but also by the coaches of the National Football League.
In the same game.
Yes.
I mean, Cleveland and the Chargers. First, you had the call from the what was it? The Chargers were the first ones, or was Cleveland? Because I remember it was Cleveland who made the first strange one.
Well, it was Cleveland made the first strange one when they went for fourth down on their own territory, didn't make it.
And they ran the ball instead of just going with like a little quarterback sneak too.
Right.
It's always weird.
So then it ends up being a Charger field goal, which, by the way, the Chargers won by 1 point or 2 points. So that was the game-winning field goal. And then there was the
Charger one.
Boneheaded call by Brandon Staley, who I think he blows my mind that he's still a coach in the National Football League. These decisions he makes are just
all analytics.
Analytics, my ass. They're right out of Twilight Zone is where they're out of.
It's crazy. But that's what I don't understand. This somebody has to show me this analytics report that shows me why when you're inside like the 50, the 40, the 30 of your own field position, and it's 4th and 1, why analytics tell you, because that's what it is. That's what the analytics say. You're supposed to go for it in those circumstances. And I don't understand how that becomes a thing. Like, how did analytics come into play that says you should go for it?
Well, why does it become the law, okay, that you have to abide by the law? It's ridiculous. You go by your gut.
That's it.
You go by gut and feel. Believe me, Vince Lombardi is turning over in his grave watching these football games right now. It's just incredible.
Yep.
And what Brandon Staley gets away with is highway robbery, Twilight Zone, unbelievable. And his decision at the end of the game to allow Cleveland to be even in a position to win the football game was ridiculous. And then Cleveland misses a field goal. One of these days, sooner than later, he's going to end up paying the price. And once that happens, Greg, it's going to happen time and time again. He's going to keep not being able to avoid all these bad decisions.
And for Cleveland, look, Deshaun Watson is going to be back at some point, and they're going to be a dangerous football team because you could tell Brissett is exactly what he is. He's a high-level backup, number 2. High-level, number 2. But he's barely a starter, number 1. And even if you want to say, he should be like a bottom 10% starter, I could even go with that. But this is what happens. Why he's not he's not a guy that can lead you, because in every game they've lost, he's had the ball in his hands with the opportunity to make a play, and he can't make it.
No, he can't. He either turns it over or fails to make the play. When he got picked in the football game, he could have run the ball. I mean, it was incredible. But we see it because we have the luxury of the cameras looking down on the field.
Oh, sure, but still.
His vision is not quite the same, but we're seeing it time and time again. And like you say, all it does is fortify the fact that he is indeed a decent backup quarterback.
Raiders, look, they came so close to winning that game, and they win that game, and they've got the rest of the season in front of them. I still believe with 17 games, I still believe if the schedule works in your favor, you can start 1-4 and maybe make a run. It's going to be tough in the AFC this year. Probably won't happen, but I'm not going to, again, the schedule is not that bad for them. And I know things haven't gone their way. But this particular game, I don't think I'm not going to blame Josh McDaniels for going for it. It's the Chiefs. You're on the road. I don't want to hear anybody say, well, if he would have just kicked the extra point, We got the ball back. No. If you took the lead in that game, you think Patrick Mahomes is just going to give you the ball back? Patrick Mahomes is going to drive down the field in about 5 plays and score a touchdown.
Yes,
He
he
needs
will.
to. So don't
Yes, he
hand
will.
me any of that. Oh, we got the ball back stuff. So I thought it was the right thing to do. But look, the problem was Derek Carr couldn't make a big play. Again, we've seen that happen. He's made big plays in his career, but he's missed a lot of great chances in his career, far more than he's made them. And he had a chance right there. He had the ball in his hands. All he had to do was get the team in field goal range, and he couldn't do it.
Well, another coach making another boneheaded decision in Josh McDaniel. I mean, you kick an extra point and tie the football game. You don't go for 2, fail, and all of a sudden you're trailing and you put the pressure back on your offense again. What are these guys eating or thinking? I don't understand it. I mean, we're not talking like in the first quarter or the second quarter. We're talking in the fourth quarter of football games, in the decision-making time in the football games. I don't get it. It seems like every new young head coach that's being hired comes with this analytical brain in their embedded in them, and they make these screwed up decisions here. I know Bill Belichick. If he had a say on something like this, he would go off on a rant like you wouldn't believe. Okay, seeing these decisions that are being made here. So hence, Josh McDaniels gets what Josh McDaniels deserves for making boneheaded calls just like that.
You know, if you look at Bill Belichick's career, you'll know, and we've been through his entire career, that early on when he was a head coach with the Patriots, his first few years when they were a couple of years when they were not this great team. Anytime there was a really critical call to be a gambler or not, he never gambled. He was like, I'm playing to the letter. I'm going to kick the extra point. I'm going to kick the field goal. I'm going to punt on 4th and 1. He was to the letter. He didn't go for it. As soon as the Patriots started to become the Patriots, he would just go for it in any circumstance that he felt he had a shot. And why? Because he had Tom Brady.
That's exactly why. And, remember, Bill Belichick probably was the pioneer of going for first down in his own territory in football games. It's like, what is he
But it didn't
thinking?
happen like when he was Brandon Staley in his first year or two. It happened after.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, he had Tom Brady.
Yes.
So, okay. Speaking of great young quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, who has a commercial, I'm not sure why. I got to tell you right now, and I'm going to officially say it. And I know there are a lot of people out there that think he needs more time, and I get it. He's young. I'm not seeing it. I think there's something really wrong with Trevor Lawrence. I don't like it. I don't like the decisions he makes. There's something about him. He just doesn't look like. I've seen this type of quarterback before when they're young and they make these mistakes and they don't seem to get it. I'm not getting it. I'm just not. I don't think he's going to make it. I just don't.
Well, what happens here, he's a quarterback that had all these great physical traits coming out of Clemson here. Size, arm, winning, everything all about that. But he's not making the right reads, okay? So is that coaching? I mean,
well, it's Doug Peterson's job at this point. So
yeah, but how many other head coaches does he work with here? He's never had a stable.
Well, he had Urban Meyer last year.
That was nice, right.
That's why I figured we'd see improvement this year with Doug Peterson, and we're not. I'm not seeing improvement.
We're not. But if you could meld like racehorses, if you could breed,
Trevor Lawrence would be it. Yeah,
Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence, and put a quarterback together with like Mac Jones he's got smarts.
Yeah.
Okay. He's got physical skills, but if you could put the two of them together here, maybe Trevor Lawrence would be a better quarterback. I'm a little bit surprised, as you are. I thought he was going to be a good NFL football quarterback, and he has indeed been disappointing.
Yeah, it's not good for the league. So I just hope that it gets better, but I don't see it happening. By the way, before we go to our games, I was taking a look. Of course, this week on Monday Night Football, we get to see the Denver Broncos. We were able to see the Denver Broncos on Thursday night last night, and I don't know if anybody was able to get through that. Unless you're a Denver Colts fan and you had to. That was bad.
That was
Bad
Zequel,
football.
is what it was. It was Zequel.
And now Denver gets to play on Monday night again on prime time. And then I was looking at next week. Are you kidding me? Next week, everybody knew who the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers was going to be when the season began. That was no surprise. So we're going to put Mitch Trubisky or a rookie quarterback on Sunday Night Football against the Dolphins. So, Monday night's different because that's like where every team gets a chance. Monday, Thursday nights where they throw them in. But Sunday night, that's supposed to be like, they're going to pick the best game and it's going to be the game of the week. Who thought of Pittsburgh?
Well, who'd have thought Pittsburgh would be what they are right now? I don't know at what point of the season they can switch that Monday night game out.
A little
or
later.
That Sunday night game.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit later.
Yep.
I think it is. But rest assured, you're still going to see Kenny Pickett here.
Oh, absolutely.
They're not going to backpedal on the decision to start him. They have to forge forward with him and see exactly what happens here. So,
how about Chicago and New England next week on Monday Night Football?
What a beauty that is. Let me set my alarm to make sure I don't miss that. Okay.
That's the second. We're into that'll be week 7, and that means we'll have seen Chicago twice on primetime football.
Oh my!
I don't get it. I don't see why they do the. It's Chicago. It's the Chicago market. We're going to do that kind of nonsense. All right, let's get to the big games this week in the NFL because we've got the biggest one of all. But before that, the Baltimore Giant game. The one at 1:00, that's the best one because that's the Wink Martindale Bowl.
Yes, it is.
And who would have thought that the Giants would be 4-1? I still don't believe in what they're doing. They just don't have the talent. But it's great coaching, and great coaching can get you far. But it's just too early in the season. I don't even know. Maybe the Giants in the NFC can get to the postseason, maybe. But now they got to play Baltimore. This is a playoff caliber AFC team. I just don't see how the Giants are going to hang with them.
Well, I'm thinking the other way here, Greg, and I'm thinking if you put tape over the names of these teams, you'd insist the Giants were the favorite in the football game. Baltimore has really, really been a travesty this year statistically. I mean, they won their first game in the yards in their last football game they played. The Giants haven't really done anything wrong. I mean, you go over to London and you knock off the Green Bay Packers. That's quite an accomplishment. And to have only one loss in the football season and be installed as a home dog against a team with the worst defense in the National Football League, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Maybe I live and die too much with my midweek alert, but the game just doesn't add up statistically for me.
Well, the Giants have won 3 games this year outright as dogs. So they've got that going for them.
Nice.
The Ravens have won both of their games straight up and against the spread on the road. So they played better on the road for whatever reason than they have at home. But look, hey, we're going to see. I think this is a good test of what I just said because we know all year, we've said, everybody knew it going into the season that the AFC was going to be so much better than the NFC. So here's a test. You have 2 teams with almost identical records from both conferences. Let's see. Let's see how it goes. So, Buffalo and Kansas City, we've been waiting for this one all season, and I think the Bills have been waiting for this one since last season. So, I guess not a surprise that the Bills are our favorite, and all you had to do was see the Vegas game to realize that. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Chiefs are the Chiefs, but they're still not. We're into week 6 now, and they still don't have like a true number 1 receiver. We don't even know who that is except for Travis Kelce. They don't have a really big running game either. So I think when they have to step up a competition like this, especially a team that wants them, I got to back Buffalo. And this is the thing that is hard, as you know, Mark, is that we could put all these numbers together, we could put all these guessing together even. But the hard part sometimes is knowing when the team you're wagering on actually will be ready and up for the game. A lot of times we don't know that. We don't know. We can't guess when a team's going to fall flat on their face. If we could do that, we'd be millionaires. Sometimes, and you sit there and you watch the game and say, how can it be so flat? How can they be flat? This is at least a game that we know that the Buffalo Bills will not be flat. They're going to bring their best. And I think that they are just right now a better team than the Chiefs, and I think they'll prove it.
Well, nor will Kansas City be flat for the football game. So this is one of these games where their names and their teams speak for themselves. You have a game on the card this week where you could find Tampa Bay flat as a pancake going to Pittsburgh to
There you
take on
go.
the Steelers,
Yeah.
okay, coming off of three straight home games in a row. I don't know how pumped up Tampa Bay is going to be going into that football game. So it could be difficult for Raheem Morris to get his football team up for that contest. Neither of these two coaches are going to have to get their team up for this contest. That was, to me, bar none, the best football game I've ever seen in the playoff game last year that went into overtime between Buffalo and Kansas City. In fact, it was so good it changed the what was it, the overtime rule? I think they
Yes.
yes,
Yes. For the
they did,
playoffs.
yes,
Yep.
because of what happened there last year.
Yep.
But I guess if I'm looking at and handicapping the game, the first thing I see is Kansas City a home underdog. Why
Yeah.
are they a home underdog? Yes, there's revenge for Buffalo. But the Bills are, as I referred to in our podcast this week, public enemy number one, meaning they're the most popular public team in the country, the Buffalo Bills. And they are because the public can't get enough of them. It doesn't matter what the spread in the game is, they're going to go lay the points and back the Buffalo Bills. And they're doing so because they're winning money doing that. I can understand that.
Yeah. They got an explosive offense. Yeah.
And they look pretty. I mean, they're just they're just what Roger Goodell wants.
Yeah.
Every team in the National Football League to be this strike at any time type of a football team. But everybody's overlooking Kansas City in this contest here. And more importantly, to me, everybody's overlooking Patrick Mahomes in this contest here. You simply don't give Patrick Mahomes points in a football game. And we call this out on the podcast as well. He's never lost the money as an underdog in his career in the NFL. He's been the dog 9 times, and he's 9-0 against the spread. I'm not going to lay points and be the first one to say, hey, I was there when he finally lost. Okay. So I'm playing Kansas City or not playing the game at all.
Sunday night, we have Dallas and the Eagles. So this is going to be a huge game in the NFC East. And I've been riding Dallas in this spot now for over a year. Why not? Because they keep delivering. They have now won 8 straight up and against the spread versus division opponents, including 2-0 this year. So I'm taking Dallas again. And so the only question is I haven't decided yet whether to take the 6 or go with the money line, which is plus 230. Plus, they've won 3 straight up and against the spread against the Eagles. Dallas has had, just like the Giants, they've had 3 outright upset wins this season. 2 of them have been on the road as dogs. And I took Arizona last week and almost got it. I think maybe Dallas will help me out this week, at least on the point spread. So again, I'm still not sure if I take the money line or not. I think I might feel a little bit safer just going with the points.
This is a really, really good football game here because you can make cases for both sides here. Number one, what Dallas did last week, they upset the defending Super Bowl champion as an underdog. Now they're on the road again in a division game. That's a real bad situation. Check out the awesome angle in this week's Playbook Football Newsletter for details on that. It'll kind of rock your socks. Philadelphia's playing arguably the best football in the NFL thus far this football season. Neither of these two football teams like one another. So the question here now becomes, can Dallas even the scoring get closer in this division race? Normally, I would say you've got that nice situation for Dallas here, trailing Philadelphia in the division, grabbing points in a game like this. But remember, Dallas is the defending NFC East champion here. They knocked Philadelphia off 3 times in a row. So now you've got triple revenge here for the Eagles coming into the contest here. They will also be up for the football contest. I'm going to lean with Philadelphia and stay at home with the undefeated team.
Yeah, and the other thing though is that I think we still need to see. The next step is to see Philly win these games against top competition. We haven't seen that yet. This would be a good way to kind of get that going. Their only win this year against a winning team is Minnesota. Dallas has had a pretty tough schedule. I do think Philadelphia has been better than Dallas this year, especially when you don't have Dak Prescott at quarterback. I mean, still, I know they're winning games with Cooper Rush, but, if anything, it should serve as an example that when Prescott comes back, you can't try to rely on Dak Prescott to win the game. Rely on your defense, rely on your running game, have him throw, really safe passes if you can. But the way you do that is you don't give Dak Prescott more than 30 passes a week. I mean, it seems like when Dak Prescott plays, everything's off the table, and they have him throw 40 times, and they forget about the running game.
I got to throw my Drew Bledsoe comment in this football game here as well, because when Bledsoe was the quarterback of the Patriots, and he finally missed a game, in stepped Tom Brady. And Tom Brady ended up becoming the GOAT of all time of National Football League. Now I'm saying Cooper Rush is going to be a GOAT, okay? But because of Prescott stepping out, Cooper Rush has really stepped in and done a real nice job. He's won and covered every football game he's played. So, that's not a disadvantage to Dallas any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it would be, but right now it's not. I think I don't think the quarterback issue is a point in this football game at all.
All right, we'll go and take a break, talk some fantasy football for just a little bit. Don't forget the markers on the bottom of the screen if you want to fast forward, as we will do the rest of the NFL games. If you are into the fantasy football thing, and keep in mind, it's just not all fantasy football. We're going to talk about key players, talk about injuries, and a lot of what we're talking about affects just the average game and anybody who wants to gamble on football in general. So check that out. Draft Sharks, Jared Small is going to join me this week. So we're going to roll with that and be back and take a look at the rest of the NFL. All right, it's time to talk fantasy. That's right, Draft Sharks, fantasy, football, and most importantly, of course, as I mentioned just a short while ago, and every week, is that this is just not all about fantasy. Even if you're just a regular gambler and you want to know what's going on, well, this is a good report for you. So we're going to fill you in with player injuries, who's hot, that kind of deal, because obviously players that get hot or cold reflect the team as well. So, Jared, good to talk to you again.
Good to be back, Greg. Week 6.
Yeah, right. I mean, considering I only speak with you every 2 weeks, it's really going to fly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and we're doing this at night. The last time, that brings me back to golf memories. So we're
doing this during the big Washington-Chicago game. I mean, I'm kind of upset I'm missing it, but
oh yeah, that's you're the only one.
Barn burner.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through the line of questioning I have for you. Let's start with the Miami Dolphins. They have a game against the Vikings. They're trying to snap a 2-game losing streak, and they're trying to do it with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. So, what do you think about? You have hot players, Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and now you got this quarterback situation. Do you disregard that, or does it all depend on what else you have? Because obviously Tyreek Hill is a big player for you.
Yeah, I mean, we have Hill and Waddle lower in our rankings this week than we would if it was Tua or even if it was Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, we're talking about a 7th-round rookie quarterback who didn't put up big numbers in college. Now, Thompson did look really good in the preseason.
He had his moments last week.
Yeah, he played okay last week. I mean, the final numbers weren't great, and it's against a beatable Jets defense.
Well, he had 2 touchdown drives in the first half, and in the second half, the Jets were able to, change.
Yeah, I mean, with Hill and Waddle, you're betting on their talent and then Mike McDaniel's scheme, which has been awesome so far, is getting those guys the ball in space. Like, we don't need Skylar Thompson to make any tough, difficult throws downfield. Like, McDaniel does a good job getting Hill and Waddle open on the short and intermediate stuff. So I think Thompson can be good enough where you're in most cases going to want to keep Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in your starting lineup.
Okay. All right. As far as teams go, I want to talk about some issues. First of all, you just mentioned the game tonight. Well, what about the game last Thursday night? I mean, had to be one of the worst games ever in primetime football. And it's amazing because you're watching this Denver Bronco team with Russell Wilson and you're scratching your head going, how is Russell Wilson not able to get the ball to these receivers on a consistent basis? So, if you're a fantasy and you've drafted these guys and you've expected a lot, what are you doing?
I mean, Courtland Sutton has somehow still been productive despite Russell Wilson's struggles. Courtland Sutton's sitting 15th among wide receivers in fantasy points right now. So I think you stick with as a starter. Judy's more fringy. Like, he's had a couple of nice games. He's had a couple duds. Judy's benchable if you have other viable options. But I mean, we'll see. Russ had the injection in his throwing shoulder the day after that Thursday night game on Friday. So we'll see what that means. I mean, his arm has looked fine to me. It's just the decision making, which Russ has always been excellent at. So it's just strange to see.
And are we getting close to the point of saying Jerry Jeudy may be overrated?
Yeah, Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I watch him and like he gets open. Like yeah, he has some drop problems. He's not going to win the contested catches, but I think he's a good route runner. He gets
Yeah,
open. There's been a few occasions this season where he could have had big plays if Wilson made better throws. So I don't know. I think the jury's still out. I'm not ready to give up on Judy yet.
Green Bay running backs, and let's put this combination between Green Bay running backs and LA Ram running backs because I actually have this on my team, my fantasy team, even though I haven't really started Henderson for the last few weeks and won't start him unless Akers is hurt. But Green Bay, I have AJ Dillon and the Giants. I mean, how do you not run the ball if you've got a lead at halftime and you throw the ball twice as much as you run the ball against a poor rushing defense? I don't get it. I don't understand what that's about. But I'm getting frustrated putting AJ Dillon out there every week, and I just don't seem to be getting much.
So last week we saw the biggest snap discrepancy between Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Aaron Jones played 73% of the snaps. AJ Dillon played just 32. It had been closer to a 50-50 split the first 4 games of the season. So I had kind of seen Dillon as a guy to like maybe go out and try to trade for because I thought better days were coming just based on the work he was getting. But now based on what we saw in week 5, and to me, Aaron Jones has just looked better than AJ Dillon this season so far. So I would not be surprised if Jones continues to, see the majority of this backfield work going forward. I think Dillon's like usable as a running back 3 or flex play, but I think Jones is definitely the guy you want in that backfield.
Well, look, I don't think there's any doubt that Aaron Jones is better running back than Dillon. But I think what Dillon needs, and usually big backs, that they got to get the ball. You can't just expect them to touch the ball especially when the idea is you want to wear down the opposition as well. And put A.J. Dillon in there in the fourth quarter. And that's also something that they haven't been able to do. So that probably comes into play as well, because if the Packers are not dominating games or they don't have 2-score leads in the fourth quarter very often this season, then it becomes a problem. So I think they should be able. Now, I think they should have success this week because the Jets, Miami did a great job running the football last week. Pittsburgh seemed to run the ball effectively a couple weeks ago. So, and we know what Cleveland did. So and this is because the Jets linebacking situation is not very good. CJ Mosley needs to go. He's not effective in this defensive scheme. He needs to go somewhere back to a 3-4. And it's just, I think that's the way. So that's why I'm definitely going to start AJ Dillon again. And I think we'll probably see the best statistical numbers out of both running backs this week.
I would definitely start Dillon over the Rams running backs. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Rams. I mean, they don't. I mean, it's incredible. The Rams. They have two viable pass catchers because Allen Robinson is just dust. So it's Kupp and Higbee, and then the offensive line is just horrible. And Akers and Henderson, neither of those guys look good to me either. So I mean, the offense is in trouble, I think. Yeah, McKay never, even last year when they went on their run, he just doesn't run the football. And and I get it, the offensive line isn't very good, but and then he tried to throw both running backs in there. There's no rhythm to the offense, especially with those running backs. All right, now let's talk about players that up, down. I want to talk about Jamar Chase because he was my first draft pick, and I don't understand what's going on. It's not all offensive line. Matter of fact, I remember watching the Dolphin game, specifically zeroing in on Burrow, and there were countless plays that he just never even looked Chase's way. I don't. How do you not devise your passing game around Jamar Chase? The Ravens couldn't stop anybody this season, and they just didn't really care to throw the ball to Jamar Chase. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, the Bengals are getting the same treatment that the Chiefs did last season, where these teams are just sitting in too high looks and just making them try to beat them with short passes. And the Bengals need to adjust. I don't think they have yet. Zach Taylor to me is not the best play caller in the NFL. I'd probably rather have 20 other play callers over Zach Taylor. So he needs to make an adjustment. You can get Jamar Chase the ball in other ways, but teams are taking away the deep balls that he thrived on last season. So they're gonna have to make a change.
As far as Breece Hall, he came out, had a welcoming party against the Dolphins, and demonstrated everything that's great about Breece Hall and what was great in college about Breece Hall, he's going to have a bright future in the NFL. And the reason is because he's got the ability to catch, and he is just a touchdown machine. He gets around the goal line and he finds ways to get in the end zone.
Of course, Michael Carter vultured him twice last week.
Yeah.
Breece Hall could have had an even bigger game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Hall is a top 12 fantasy running back the rest of the way. He looks awesome. I like how they're using him. And the gap between Hall and Carter as far as touches go just gets wider and wider every week. So I think Hall's going to be a guy that's going to be getting 20 touches a game going forward.
What do you think about DJ Moore, another player that was drafted on my team this season, and I've just been hanging on to him, and Matt Rule's fired, so that's great news because that's a change. There's rumors about him getting traded. I spoke with our Carolina Panthers analyst earlier, and we have that on the channel. And he indicated that he felt chances are he's not getting traded, doesn't believe he's going to get traded. His number's probably going to go up because PJ Walker's numbers with DJ Moore are good. And even Sam Darnold, of course, had good numbers. And I think they expect Sam Darnold back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to imagine PJ Walker being any worse than Baker Mayfield has been. Like, I think it'd be tough to be worse than Baker. I don't think Walker is going to be a big upgrade. But I think, as you alluded to, Walker has made 2 NFL starts. He's targeted DJ Moore on 29% of his passes in those 2 games. So at least he knows, where his bread is buttered. And I think he's going to focus on getting the ball to DJ Moore, getting the ball to Christian McCaffrey. I think Moore could be okay as like a wide receiver 3. I don't think he's probably going to be more than that, but I think he could be a bit better going forward than he has been so far.
You think this would be a really good time to trade for him because you don't have to trade much?
Yeah, if you can get him for super cheap, I'd go ahead. I just don't trade for him thinking you're gonna get the top
the guy you thought you were getting in the beginning of the season. Yeah.
Exactly.
Kyler Murray, how's he doing fantasy wise?
He's been like a floor play. He has no big games, but he has been like a top 12 quarterback, I think, in 4 of his 5 games. They're gonna get the Hopkins back next week, which is going to kick AJ Green off the field. AJ Green's been totally worthless so far. So, and then even this week, Kyler has an awesome matchup against Seattle. Seattle hasn't been able to stop anything. So I think Kyler might kind of get going this week, and then once he gets Hopkins back in week 7, I think he could really get going.
Speaking of Arizona, then what about Eno Benjamin? Because you know, some places he might be a free agent. You might be able to pick him up, and if he is, you should go after him, right? Especially this week.
Yeah, we have him as like a top 20 running back play this week. It sounds like James Conner is going to miss. Sounds like Darrell Williams is going to miss. So it's, Eno Benjamin. They have rookie Keontae Ingram, a couple guys on the practice squad. But I think Benjamin is looking at, 15, 18 touches, again, against a pretty bad Seattle defense. So I think Benjamin should be a solid fantasy start this week.
I have Marquise Brown on my fantasy team, and he's had a very solid start to the season, even though there's no explosive plays yet, which is what you would normally expect out of Brown. But I actually think he might end up with better stats when Hopkins comes back.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too. Hopkins, his volume and efficiency tailed off last season from where it was, for the first 7-8 years of career, wherever it was. And he's what is he? I think he's 30 or 31 now. I think he's probably, in decline phase at this point. So I would bet on Marquise Brown outscoring Hopkins from week 7 on.
And then, of course, having a lot of the attention going to Hopkins, putting Brown maybe against inferior DBs now, big drop.
Yep.
Also, Trevor Lawrence, I wanted to bring up. I don't know about you, but it's starting to get to a point now, watching him, that I don't know, man. He's not looking good.
Well, he has flashes of greatness. He has even has games like that Chargers game. He was excellent. Even 2 weeks ago in Philly in the rain, like that was just a tough spot. I kind of gave him a mulligan for that game. But last week, home for Houston, that was bad. So I don't know. I just think he's a young, inconsistent quarterback. I still want to believe, in his long-term outlook. But for fantasy this year, he's kind of tough to rely on because he's just so inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, fantasy-wise, speaking of the quarterbacks, I mean, right now you have a couple of. I mean, got Geno Smith who is available in most leagues. So
Pick him up. Pick him up.
Yeah, I would think so. How do you rate him right now?
I think like for the rest of the season, he's like borderline top 12. We have him as our 8th ranked quarterback for this week because he gets the Cardinals, who are really bad against the pass. And that game should be a high scoring game.
Yes.
He legitimately is one of the best like 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now, just through the first 5 weeks, the way he's throwing the football. So I'm kind of just gonna ride the hot streak at this point.
Yeah, because what I've been seeing out of Geno too, it's not like a fluke, because he is like, his arm strength, his down to field passing. I mean, if you just took a Geno Smith away and you implanted like Herbert in there, you would go, oh yeah, man, of course Herbert's awesome, man, isn't he awesome? But it's Geno, so nobody's giving him any credits. It's just what is this? This ain't gonna last.
I mean, you can look at like any quarterback metric right now, and Geno Smith is like top 3 in the NFL. Like he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL through 5 weeks. As crazy as that sounds,
it is. Okay, now guys that are coming back. You mentioned Hopkins. What do you do with Gus Edwards? Interested?
We'll see.
Or wait and see?
I mean, in a deep league, you could stash him. I don't know. It seems like the knee injury was pretty serious. I don't know if he had a setback. I mean, it took him a while.
Yeah, I think
to
so.
Come back.
Probably.
I mean, there's opportunity there because J.K. Dobbins doesn't look right yet, and they're obviously limiting his snaps. So there's opportunity for Gus Edwards. I'm just not super confident he can capitalize this season.
All right, Van Jefferson. You mentioned Robinson. Yeah. It's not like he's exploded, so he should be back soon, Jefferson, shouldn't he?
He landed on IR. I'm trying to pull up our note on him, but he landed on IR a couple of weeks ago, so I think he's out at least another like 2 weeks at this point.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, the fact that so maybe the week before he gets, you would go, look, if Robinson doesn't make strides by then, pick Jefferson up.
Yeah, they need him. Jefferson has the deep speed that they're missing, right? I mean, Robinson has none of that. Kupp is not really a deep ball guy. Jefferson has that. So I think, if Jefferson's healthy, I would bet on him emerging as the number 2 wide receiver in that offense.
And Brian Robinson for Washington, what's going on there?
Well, he's got all 4 of their carries.
Okay.
Through the first quarter. I do think he's going to be their lead ball carrier the rest of the way. What that's worth for fantasy, I'm not sure, because like he's not going to be a big touchdown guy in this offense. I don't think he's going to catch a lot of passes. So he's okay. Like as bye weeks start to hit now, you might need to use Robinson, but I would definitely not want to be starting him every single week.
By the way, did Wentz start?
Yeah, okay. Wentz is
so
starting.
What's up with Wentz?
That game's
because
he's got a bicep injury, I guess.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
I mean, fantasy-wise, his numbers are like kind of up and down, but you can't trust him.
He has 3 pretty big games that have good matchups. He's been horrible against the Cowboys and Eagles, who are 2 good pass defenses. So he's actually been pretty predictable. Like in good matchups, he's delivered. So
maybe use him that way. If you want to pick up a quarterback when your quarterback's on a bye, just say, all right, does Carson Wentz have a good matchup the same week?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
How about Tevin Coleman with that 40-9 running back situation? Because it seems like for the past 3 years, they go through running backs like, come on. It's like 7 guys a year with injuries. So, I picked him up. I said, why not? I'll give him a chance. Not going to start him right away, but I'll give him a chance.
Exactly. Yeah, I picked him up in a few leagues. I thought he looked really good in that game against Carolina last week. Guys, Jeff Wilson's still the guy there. But I think Coleman's 1 injury away from being the lead back because Kyle Shanahan trusts Tevin Coleman. He's been in that offense for multiple years, so he's a good handcuff. I think Tevin Coleman is.
What do you do with Taysom Hill?
Yeah, I mean we've talked about this on our podcast. I think we said there's like 8 tight ends that we'd start over him because like his floor is like 1 fantasy point, but we saw a ceiling last week. It's 30 fantasy points. Tight end 10, whoever that is, say it's, I don't know, Hayden Hurst. His floor is like 3 fantasy points, but his ceiling is nowhere near Taysom Hill. So you're giving up a little bit of floor, but you're getting the potential for a massive fantasy game.
And maybe you have him, you play him against bad teams like Seattle.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's a little tough because he's not a traditional tight end, so you can't look at like the tight end matchup numbers. But yeah, in games where the Saints are projected to score more points, that's definitely a good spot to use Taysom.
Joshua Kelly. Now, we talked about him in the preseason. I mentioned that I thought he was a sleeper as a rookie, and then he just disappeared the last couple of seasons. So I kind of gave up on him. But now it appears that after last week, it's possible that he might end up, for at least for a week or two, as the number 2 back. Which means that, Austin Eckler, especially if I have Eckler, I'm definitely picking Joshua Kelly up to make sure he's my backup.
Yeah, he looks like the number 2 back at this point. Kelly played 38% of the snaps last week. Sony Michel played just 3%. That was the biggest discrepancy we've seen this season. So Kelly looks like the handcuff to Austin Eckler, who, of course, is an undersized back who has missed lots of time with injury. So Kelly should be rostered in most fantasy leagues at this point.
And speaking of injuries, so if you drafted Rashad Penny like I did, you had better have picked up Kenneth Walker like I did. That was a no-brainer. You can't pick up Penny without picking up Walker. It's unfortunate that Penny went down, but having Walker, even though you'd rather have Penny, I'd rather have Penny full-time. It may be better in the long run this season to have Walker without Penny, because now you just play Walker and he's going to get a majority of the touches.
Exactly. Walker's role now is going to be better than Penny's role was when he was, having to defend with Kenneth Walker, and the Seahawks had been using a third back, whether it's DJ Dallas or Travis Homer. Now it's just Walker and Dallas for now. Homer's on IR. He'll be back in a couple weeks, I think. But Walker's going to dominate the ball carrying work. We'll see how much action he gets in the passing game. He didn't do that much in college. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, if he even can get 2, 3, 4 targets a game, that'd be nice, because he's going to be getting 15 plus carries.
And I also wanted to ask you about Jacoby Myers, because he's one of those types of receivers that he's not a sexy receiver. So it's like you try to avoid him almost. But is he somebody that is not a bad receiver to have on your team as a backup?
Yeah, I think especially in PPR. I mean, that's where Myers' value is, because he's a volume receiver. He's not going to make big plays. He doesn't score a bunch of touchdowns. But I mean, he has seen like 30% of the Patriots' targets so far this season. Like, he is clearly the top guy in that passing game. It's not a high volume passing game. There are quarterback issues there, but I think you could do worse than Myers as a guy you're using in bye weeks and maybe in better matchups.
And before I let you go, we'll close with give us your sleeper player of the week, or players that you believe might be on the verge of breaking out.
And this one might be too obvious, but I want to just mention Ramondre Stevenson. He's going to have a massive game this week. We have likely no Damian Harris. It's just a couple of rookies behind Stevenson in that backfield. The Browns have been the worst running back defense so far through the first 5 weeks of the season. So Stevenson set up for a massive week. Outside of that, I like Rondale Moore this week.
Really?
His role is trending up. He debuted in week 4 and played way too much on the outside. Last week, AJ Green came back and Rondale Moore played almost all of his snaps in the slot.
Okay.
That's where we want Rondale Moore. He's an undersized guy. That's where he played most of his snaps at Purdue. And again, I think that Cardinals Seahawks game is going to be high scoring. So I think you want pieces of that game.
Absolutely. All right, sounds good. How's everything else going with Draft Sharks, Jared?
Good. We're rolling along.
Rolling along, and there's, where are we? We're not at the midway point yet. A few more weeks to go.
Yet.
Yeah, not yet. So we'll talk again in a couple of weeks, and that'll be about the midway point almost in a couple of weeks. Buys yet? Do we have buys yet?
Yes, this is the first week. There's 4 teams on bye this week.
That's right. We do have buys. Okay.
Yep.
So that, you like buys?
I love buys because it's less work for me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love it because I have to watch so many games. That's 4 less games I have to worry about.
Yes, every fewer game saves me, multiple hours of work every week. So I like it. I like it for fantasy too. I think it tests your team's depth, obviously, when you got to start dealing with bye weeks. So I like it.
All right, Jared, appreciate it. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks. Matt will join us next week, and enjoy your golf.
Yeah, I'm not watching any. I'm hoping to play this weekend, so we'll see if I can get out there. But yeah, good luck in
Where about?
In football. Local course. Yeah, I'm up in Rochester, New York, so it's
Okay.
going to be like 50. So that's warm enough.
Yeah. I'm good. Good luck with my Jet Packer game. So
Yeah.
we're 3-2 so far, but I'm not sure we'll be 4-2. Well, I
Probably
hope
not.
we're 4-3 by the time we talk in 2 weeks. Is that what it'll
Who do
be?
they
There'll
got?
be two more games by the time we talk, or just the one?
Yeah, 2 more. Who
Two
do they
more.
got in week? They play Denver in week
Denver.
7.
That's what I'm saying. So if they're not 4-3
That's
by
winnable.
then, I'll be pretty upset. So
Okay.
thanks,
Fingers
Jared.
crossed. All right. Thanks, Greg.
All right, back to the show, everybody. All right, we're back. Let's run through the rest of the NFL right now. I'll tell you what, let's do this through chronological order. We'll start at the 1 o'clock games. Cincinnati and New Orleans. Cincinnati's a 1.5 favorite the last time I checked. Saints had that big win last week. Taysom Hill went off. Cincinnati, I don't know what's going on right now with that offense. Offensive line has done better, but they're still not explosive as I thought that they would be. I still like the Saints in this one. The Bengals in this one because I don't trust the Saints. I don't think Taysom Hill can do what he did last week every week, so I'll take Cincinnati.
Well, the number's right, Greg, in this game if you like Cincinnati, but the biggest hurdle they have to overcome is the fact that they were the Super Bowl loser, their road favorite in a non-division game, the worst possible role they could be in, but it's only 1.5 points.
Super Bowl losers. Jacksonville and Indianapolis, Colts are a 1.5 point favorite. I'm actually surprised they're only a 1.5 point favorite. I wouldn't respect Jacksonville at this point after the last couple of weeks. But I can't even take the Colts, to tell you the truth. This is a game I would stay far from.
Tough game for me, too, as well. You got a lot of domination by Jacksonville in the series in the past, but do you have enough points? That's the question.
San Francisco, Atlanta. I'm jumping back on Atlanta. I can't believe I took them last week and they covered, so I'm staying on the 5-0 against the spread Falcons against San Francisco, who was a 3-star pick for me last week, but I'm riding this Atlanta Falcons spread deal. And just taking a look at it, keep in mind that you got conflicting trends. San Francisco 2-16 last 18 versus non-division conference opponents with revenge. San Francisco won 31-13 last year, but Atlanta just 2-12 last 14 with revenge versus an opponent off a straight-up ATS win.
Well, you're on a roll with Atlanta. You can't hop off that roll. You don't get off the merry-go-round when it's going this fast. And also, San Francisco has really come off a string of some really good, tough football games here. I don't disagree with you at all. I think the Falcons have to be a good side in this football contest.
Jets and Packers, if the Jets want to be taken seriously, well, go ahead and beat the Packers on Sunday. Other than that, it's still a rebuilding job. The LaFleurs go up against each other. And speaking of Matt LaFleur, he has never lost a cover after a straight-up non-division loss. Jets have 3 outright upset wins this year. I do not believe they're going to make it 4.
I love that the LaFleurs go up against one another here. That completely got past me, Greg. That's a great point on your part. We'll see which of these two are the better coaches, the Green Bay LaFleur or the other LaFleur.
Yeah, well, the head coach better be better.
Yeah.
New England and Cleveland. Cleveland, revenge possible. They lost to New England 45-7 last year. I'm sure you remember that one.
Oh,
but
yeah.
check out Bill Belichick. 18-2 against the spread off a straight-up win, taking on an opponent off a straight-up loss with revenge.
I'm going to side with Cleveland here, Greg. I mean, you can make cases to say they should be undefeated this year. They're not. They've made mistakes, and they've got problems. Jacoby Brissett's a backup quarterback. But you got New England pretty fat and sassy off that shutout win against hapless Detroit last week. I think this is a good spot for the Browns to bounce back this week.
Yeah, I like the Browns as well. Tampa Bay, 8.5 at Pittsburgh. And Tampa Bay, 0-3 ATS last 3 this year. Also 0-6 ATS last 6 before they take on Carolina, who they'll play next week. This is the Tony Dungy Bowl. Pittsburgh, though, check this out. They're 5-0-3 against the spread. Their last 8 as a home dog since 2017. I'm going to take Pittsburgh in the points.
You mentioned Tony Dungy. I'm watching NFL NBC football, and I see Tony Dungy sitting in the middle next to Maria Taylor, the new co-host on the show Sunday nights, and he looks like he's about a foot shorter than she is. They ought to get him propped up a little bit.
He's shrinking already.
Yeah, when they set him up here anyway. But nonetheless, tough spot, as I mentioned earlier, for Tampa Bay off 3 consecutive home games. Pittsburgh absolutely humiliated. You find even the worst of teams in the National Football League responding after humiliation like Pittsburgh went through. get the clothespin out and take the points with the Steelers.
I might actually roll with the money line on that one.
There you go.
Yeah. Minnesota and Miami, and we don't know yet what's going on with Miami, but I get the feeling we're going to see Skylar Thompson. And if
we are, that's confirmed.
Oh, it is confirmed. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen there. We got 2 rookie head coaches going up against each other with a combined 7-3 record. But the Vikings have dropped 4 straight covers, even though they're 4-1 on the season. They're a 3.5-point favorite. So I guess they're going to win by 3.
Who knows? I mean, it's criminal what's happened to Miami. They got to such a great start, and then the Tua Tagovailoa episode happened, and everything's coming apart at the seams. Maybe it's karma for Stephen Ross for all the garbage that he went through in the National Football League, and the gods are paying him back right now. But I think it's a tough call. I'm going to stay out of the game.
By the way, Miami 9-3-1. Their last 13 as a home dog.
Nice.
And they're covered already once this year as a home dog. Okay, 4 o'clock games, Arizona, Seattle. First time Arizona's favored this year. They're going to be host with the Saints next Thursday night, by the way. Seattle, first time that they're a home dog since week 1 when they upset Denver. Seattle 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. Their last 3 versus Arizona. Arizona 2-0 straight up and against the spread on the road this season. What do you like in that one?
Well, good point about Arizona being favored for the first time. Normally, Arizona is a real good road team, especially because they've been underdogs and taking points. Now the role changes here. Okay, it goes into Seattle, but I still think Kyler Murray will make amends for that faux pas last week and get the job done against the Seahawks.
Yeah, these are the games that he wins against the bad teams.
Right.
Carolina and the Rams, new coach for Carolina, so and a new quarterback, PJ Walker. So that's a combination that I kind of want to stay away from. You don't know what's going to happen in that one. The Rams are 2-0 versus losing teams this year, 0-3 versus winning teams, but they're given 10.5, and they're 0-4 against the spread at home this year.
I'll take your 2-0, and I'll counter that with PJ Walker being 2-0 straight up and to the spread as a starting quarterback in the National Football League.
Rams have lost the last 2 by a 46-19 margin.
Wow.
Pretty bad.
This is a difficult game because you've got a super embarrassed defending Super Bowl champion here, and you don't know what the mental is for Carolina after the firing of Matt Rule. I'm staying as far away from this as I can possibly stay.
Yep, and that'll wrap it up. So next week, again, we told you about the primetime games in the NFL. Sunday's best next week. We have one good one, and it's Kansas City again. It's Kansas City and San Francisco. Other than that, the Sunday games are not very good next week. The best I could find is Indianapolis and Tennessee. So next week's NFL games, not very good.
Yes.
And college football's best next week, Mississippi State, Alabama. We talked about that. What if Minnesota and Penn State win this week? They play each other next week. Syracuse and Clemson next week. Texas, Oklahoma State next week could be huge in the Big 12. So could Kansas State and TCU. And UCLA, Oregon. We talked about that as well. Mark, appreciate it as always. Pleasure working with you on the air, covering, analyzing, handicapping, picking games, and so forth. And I look forward to doing it again with you next week.
Greg, go rest. Take care of that throat. You've been doing a lot this week. I can tell you're doing a great job for the Playbook experts as well, doing all of our video for us as well. So enjoyed it. Be well, and good luck this week.
Thanks, Mark.